Chapter 821, Strategy to Attack Blessed Land, Conversation about Tao. Tai Bai Yunxing sat on the chair. He was stunned before laughing and scolding. "Junior brother, you're making fun of me. I've heard this phrase countless times, ever since I started my cultivation journey. It's been ringing in my head. Even mortals are familiar with the phrase." Fang Yuan nodded. There was a hint of arrogance in his tone. He spoke. "The origin of this phrase is the first rank 9 Gu immortal in human history. It was said by primordial origin immortal venerable. He was the creator of Central Continent's heavenly court. It has remained standing up until now, through many eras, never falling to the corrosion of time. This phrase is extremely brilliant. It is the golden rule of Gu master cultivation, having been passed down since long ago. It is even more popular than the legends of Renzu. But in my opinion, this phrase is not brilliant enough. I summarized it into one word, that is, Tao." Tai Bai Yunxing heard this and straightened his body. He looked at Fang Yuan with shining eyes as he said again, "Please enlighten me." Fang Yuan said slowly, "Man is the spirit of all living beings. Among all living beings, humans have the highest intelligence and comprehension ability. We can understand heaven and earth and experience the great Tao. Gu are the essence of heaven and earth. They are very unique among living beings. Gu worms contain meager traces of the great Tao in their bodies, while immortal Gu contain fragments of the great Tao. Thus, they are the essence of heaven and earth. What is Tao? Water flows downwards, humans die from hunger, trees grow because of rain and fertilizers. These are all Tao. Gu masters use Gu worms. They can light up fire, make rivers flow upwards, shoot out lightning, heal injuries. These are also Tao. Humans nurture, use, and refine Gu. They are making use of the Gu worms to display the might of heaven and earth. By living and procreating, they eventually understand the laws of the world. After becoming a Gu immortal, the aperture becomes an immortal aperture, and Tao marks are carved on the body. One could say that Gu masters are nurturing Tao when they nurture Gu worms. They are using Tao when they use Gu worms, and they are refining Tao when they refine Gu worms. There are Gu masters of all sorts of paths: strength path, fire path, time path, poison path. These are all created by our predecessors who walked on an unknown path, a cultivation path that they created step by step." Saying so, Fang Yuan paused before saying, "So in other words, when Gu masters cultivate, they are basically cultivating Tao." When Gu masters cultivate, they are basically cultivating Tao. Tai Bai Yunxing sat on the chair. He frowned as he thought over Fang Yuan's words. The more he muttered it, the more he felt the extreme brilliance of Fang Yuan's conclusion. This was truly directed at the core of the issue. To him, it was as if he felt clouds parting. He could see the clear skies. At this point, Fang Yuan continued, "Let's talk about the foundation of a Gu immortal's cultivation, the immortal aperture. The immortal aperture is the blessed land or grotto heaven. It is a small world that contains Tao in it. This kind of Tao cannot compare to the world of the 5 regions. It is only expressed in Tao marks. Take my Hu immortal blessed land as an example. It has the basic time path Tao marks, thus it can draw in a tributary of the river of time, allowing the concept of time to exist in the blessed land, and for time to flow. It also has a rather large number of space path Tao marks, thus the blessed land is large. Even after losing the north area, it still is very large. Hu immortal land spirit can even teleport freely. In blessed lands with few space path Tao marks, they have a smaller area and the land spirit cannot teleport. It is most abundant in enslavement path Tao marks. Precisely because of these Tao marks, Hu immortal blessed land is helpful for raising foxes. In addition, it can help in enslaving beast groups that are similar in body structure to foxes, and can even promote the growth of desolate beasts." Tai Bai Yunxing nodded and said in agreement, "That is absolutely correct. In my Tai Bai blessed land, it is most numerous in time path Tao marks, thus my time-based resources are very abundant. One day in the outside world is 33 days in my blessed land. It has the least earth path Tao marks, thus there are no mountains in my blessed land, and the soil is infertile as well. In terms of space path Tao marks, it is only ordinary. In total, the area is not large, but the sky is very high. Fin the new. St. Uvels on n /velbin.com. He said this as his eyes shined brightly, he gained some understanding. That is why I said the offense and defense of a blessed land only is based at one thing, that is, the composition of Tao marks in the blessed land. Fang Yuan continued. Blessed lands are a small world, why can they restrict enemies and seal their gu worms? The reason is because of the large number of Tao marks in the blessed land, it is like a pond. Mortal gu contain traces of Tao, they are like drops of water, sparks of fire. One drop of water entering the pond would be fused into it easily. One spark of fire entering the pond will get extinguished easily. Thus, once the Tao marks in the blessed land are activated, the heavenly power would be enforced and mortal gu would lose effect. Why are immortal gu unrestricted by blessed lands? Because immortal gu are the law fragments, they are unique entities, just like a rock. When a rock is tossed into a pond, no matter how the surface ripples, the entry of the rock cannot be stopped. But although it cannot be sealed, it can be suppressed. When an immortal gu is used in blessed lands to battle, its power would be weakened or strengthened by the blessed land's Tao marks. As for gu immortals, when they invade blessed lands, they would be suppressed by the Tao marks as well. But gu immortals have an immortal body, they are fundamentally different from mortals. What are immortal bodies? To put it simply, they are bodies that have Tao marks carved on them. When gu immortals invade blessed land, the more Tao marks in the blessed land, the more suppression the gu immortal would feel. In contrast, the more Tao marks on the gu immortal's body, the less suppression they would experience. In his past life, Fang Yuan was a blood path gu immortal. He could not enter many of the fragment worlds of the immemorial 9 heavens. That was because these fragment worlds had sparse Tao marks, they were far fewer than the Tao marks in his body. If Fang Yuan entered them, it would be like a tiger entering a rabbit's cage, the only result would be that the fragment world would burst, causing the fragment world's Tao marks to be destroyed, the winds of assimilation would blow and destroy all of the resources in the fragment world. Or looking at another example, the demons and Dong Fang Chang Fan had been fighting in Jade Pool blessed land. Dong Fang Chang Fan used his territorial advantage and caused the gu immortals to be unable to use their mortal gu, but he could not seal their immortal killer moves. This was because Jade Pool blessed land was a public blessed land, even though it had a lot of Tao marks, it was very mixed. Dong Fang Chang Fan could not mobilize all of the Tao marks, he could only control the part of the blessed land that he contributed. Thus, its power was limited. He could not even cause the flying gu immortals to land on the ground. Not all gu immortals possessed immortal killer moves for flying. But gu immortals have Tao marks in their bodies, they can resist the suppression of the blessed land's Tao marks. The demonic path gu immortals' mortal killer moves had no effect against Dong Fang Chang Fan, but the mortal killer moves used on their own bodies still had effect. Truly insightful, truly insightful. Tai Bai Yun Sheng was struck by realization, he sighed, I understand. Public blessed lands have weak defenses, why is that? That is because they are formed by numerous gu immortals sacrificing a portion of their blessed lands, they were pieced together. These types of blessed lands are very mixed in Tao mark varieties, they cancel out each other and cannot form a cohesive strength, it is like having a finger each from 5 people, they can only act individually, they cannot form into a fist. Blessed land that have a soul origin also have Tao marks that are pure. If there are land spirits, they can expend immortal essence and mobilize the Tao marks to use the heavenly power. Immortal gu are the law fragments, there are Tao marks on the desolate beasts' bodies, gu immortals have been mentioned already, immortal gu houses are formed by combining immortal gu, while immortal killer moves are the fusion of many types of Dao marks, they are an effect or great power formed from varying sources. Thus, be it the blessed land or grotto heaven, the purer the Dao marks, the harder it is to take down. Land spirit, immortal essence, they are all to assist the use of Dao marks. Looking at Imperial Court blessed land, if not for the land spirit and 88 True Yang building contesting against each other, if it was fully protected, how could it be destroyed? Saying this, Tai Bai Yunsheng left his seat, he straightened his back and faced Fang Yuan, bowing. After hearing your words, Fang Yuan, I have truly felt enlightened, my questions are answered, I have gained much from it. From today onwards, I would not dare to call you junior brother, a skilled person is a teacher, on the road of cultivation, you have already surpassed me. He, old Bai, today, we are just having a casual conversation. You do not need to be humble, you know this reasoning deep within yourself, you were just not as clear on it as me. Fang Yuan waved his hand, he was very calm and collected. Tai Bai Yunsheng's face was austere, no, although the reasoning is simple, it is extremely brilliant. The word Dao is indeed more brilliant than the phrase, man is the spirit of all living beings, Gu are the essence of heaven and earth. I was quite ignorant in the past, only now have I seen the essence of Gu master cultivation. This reasoning, I am afraid ordinary Gu immortals have not comprehended it yet. Fang Yuan showed a slight smile. Tai Bai Yunsheng's words were not exaggerated. In truth, the reason he could understand this was because he had the advantage of being a transmigrator. In the previous life of his previous life, Earth was greatly developed in the field of science. Laws of mechanics, trigonometry, acceleration, density, specific heat capacity and others, weren't all these the laws of nature? From this aspect, science is also a form of cultivation. Give me a fulcrum and I shall move the earth. This classic sentence, when used in the Gu world, would be, give me a Gu worm, and I can give off light and heat. Give me all the Gu worms, and I will be omnipotent. Because he had experiences from two worlds, Fang Yuan could observe this world from another angle, he could understand logic that others could not sense or comprehend. But in the Gu master world, was there nobody who can understand this reasoning? How could that be? There were lots of people who understood, primordial origin immortal venerable was one of them. Man is the spirit of all living beings, Gu are the essence of heaven and earth. This was a more detailed and easily understood explanation of Dao, primordial origin immortal venerable said it to aid in educating people of the future, it led to the development of inheritances of various paths, he had a different objective. Anyone who could understand this was someone of high position, a Gu immortal that stood up high, after looking at their cultivation journey over their entire life, they could conclude this. Ordinary Gu masters were living in the mortal world, ordinary Gu immortals were busy dealing with their calamities and tribulations, why would they have time to think about such useless things? Whether they could understand this reasoning or not, their lives would not be affected. In the end, it was only a way of thinking. But one could not look down on this way of thinking. Gunpowder was first used to refine pills in ancient China. When exposed to other civilizations, it had been developed into use for guns and cannons. The ingenuity of Chinese civilization was unquestionable, but modern Earth was on the path of science, and the Western world's contribution was the greatest. Different streams of thought would prevail in separate societies when viewing the world, and two different civilizations would be created. Between civilizations, one could not say which was superior or inferior, they were specialized in different things. Thus, Tai Bai Yunsheng, who was part of the Gu master civilization, heard Fang Yuan's words and was deeply enlightened. From his perspective, he could feel that Fang Yuan's understanding was much higher than him, he did not dare to call him junior brother anymore. A skilled person is a teacher. If he continued to call Fang Yuan junior brother, Tai Bai Yunsheng would feel extremely embarrassed inwardly. There was a type of feeling called humiliation of being inferior. Tai Bai Yun Sheng was currently in such a state. The two talked for some more time before Tai Bai Yun Sheng said his goodbyes to Fang Yuan. Even though they had always communicated with each other using Gu, after a face-to-face conversation, any distance between them had vanished. Fang Yuan had lived in two worlds, his manipulation techniques were extremely amazing. After a simple conversation about Dao, he left a deep impression in Tai Bai Yun Sheng, making the latter have a feeling of inferiority. Chapter 822, Discussion about Huge Plan, Rejection. After learning that Tai Bai Yun Sheng had returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fairy Li Shan rushed to Hu Immortal Blessed Land as quickly as possible. Right now in Snowy Mountain, old ancestor Shui, who was present all the time, Tai Bai Yun Sheng was an outsider and had a sensitive identity, he could not go there anymore. Thus, the best location was still Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Because Tai Bai Yun Sheng had the experience of saving Dang Hun Mountain, this process did not have any issues, it was completed uneventfully. Fairy Li Shan's pale face let out a sigh. After getting past this difficulty, a weight on her mind had finally been lifted. But she still had severe injuries on her, she needed to recuperate. Wait a moment. Fairy Li Shan was about to return to Snowy Mountain Blessed Land, but Fang Yuan stopped her. I have a huge transaction, I wonder if you are interested. Fang Yuan talked about his plan. He did not have the wealth to refine Immortal Gu. But that did not mean that the combination of Tai Bai Yun Sheng, Fairy Li Shan, He Lu Lan, and Fang Yuan could not afford it. Right now, Fairy Jiang Yu's whereabouts are unknown, and to take Dark Limit Immortal Gu, we do not have a technique like that of thieving Heaven Demon Venerable, it would be very difficult. I obtained an immortal killer move from Dong Fong Chong Fan's inheritance, it is called Star Fog Concealment, it can conceal one from heavenly secrets and is suitable for us. Fairy Li Shan's words immediately interested Fairy Li Shan and He Lu Lan, who was beside her. But after hearing that Star Fog Concealment needed 2 Immortal Gu as the core to activate it, Fairy Li Shan smiled bitterly as she shook her head. Refining an Immortal Gu is already beyond our capabilities, 2 Immortal Gu are an impossible task. Now, although restoring Minuscule Mountain saved Fairy Li Shan a huge amount of expenses, the injuries on her body still needed to be healed by other Gu immortals. There was also old ancestor Shui whose missions that had been given to her, and the fact that she was sponsoring He Lu Lan to cultivate all along, her deep financial power was at its limits. She was in difficult circumstances with funds, just like Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan had no choice, he could only come up with another investment plan. He suggested, by gathering the wealth of all 4 of them, they could purchase knowledge and experiences of raising hairy men, and buy hairy man slaves in bulk. They could also raise the scale of the stone nests, increasing the production of air sac Gu, to increase the amount of guts Gu traded. The 4 can split the profits after that. This plan was much cheaper than refining Immortal Gu. But he was rejected by Fairy Li Shan. Fang Yuan, have you thought about Immortal Crane's sex reaction? Your guts Gu trade is a monopoly, it is extremely profitable and has attracted much attention. If you increase the scale of production, Immortal Crane's sect is bound to become even more jealous. If the balance in their mindsets change, they might target Hu Immortal Blessed Land again. What will you do then? We have enough trouble already, the less complications, the better. Fang Yuan was silently before replying, you are right, forget about it. After Fairy Li Shan returned to Snowy Mountain Blessed Land, He Lu Lan stayed in a stone nest to refine air sac Gu for Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan's 2 suggestions did not succeed. He was unresigned. After returning to Dang Hun Palace, he contacted Langya Land's spirit. The hairy men in Langya Blessed Land were the best quality he had ever seen. Even in a high-end market like Treasure Yellow Heaven, none of the hairy men were as skillful as the ones in Langya Blessed Land. From this, one could easily guess that Langya Land's spirit had the best methods to raise hairy men as well as rich experience in doing so. Fang Yuan did not have immortal essence stones, but he had the wisdom path inheritance, many immortal Gu recipes, and he had a huge amount of immortal materials. They were all things that Langya Land's spirit desired. Could he use these to make a transaction with Langya Land's spirit? Fang Yuan started with hope, but he ended with disappointment. Langya Land's spirit's attitude was firm, it was like an iron wall with no way of getting through. You're targeting the hairy men? Don't even think about it. If you want to trade with me, there is only one way, by completing the task. Langya Land's spirit repeated the task again. He wanted that rank 6 immortal material, poisonous flower petals. Fang Yuan was slightly interested. He thought about it as he asked, if I can get this immortal material for you, can you sell me some hairy man slaves, or a portion of your experience in raising them? Langya Land's spirit waved his sleeves in rejection. Impossible, anything involving hairy men is not for sale, you should forget about this idea. But if you can find the immortal material I want, I can give you the Gu recipes of all-out effort Gu. In fact, I not only have the rank 1 to 5 Gu recipes of all-out effort Gu, I also have the rank 6 all-out effort immortal Gu recipe. Isn't this something you need? Langya Land's spirit tossed out this bait. It indeed enticed Fang Yuan, but he was also a little angry internally. Langya Land's spirit was trying to make use of Fang Yuan, but could it be so easy to get this immortal material? The danger was too great. Fang Yuan would have to risk his life. As the saying goes, a fall in a pit, a gain in one's wit. How many times had Fang Yuan taken advantage of Langya Land's spirit? The Northern Plains auction was simply too much of a loss for the land spirit. The pain was so great that the land spirit had come to a realization. That was why Langya Land's spirit became so hard to deal with. The reason was Fang Yuan. Investment or effort leads to reward. The reverse is also true, any reward would have its price. Fang Yuan obtained so much in immortal materials for essentially no cost. The price was that his relationship with Langya Land's spirit became ice cold. Land spirits were formed by the fusion of obsession and heavenly power. They were very stubborn. Even though they could not lie, once they made up their minds, they would not easily change it. Thus, suddenly, Fang Yuan could not do anything. Langya Blessed Land could not provide him any more help. There was no need to ask Langya Land's spirit for any investments. His plan failed. Fang Yuan sighed as he placed his attention on the Blessed Land's calamity. 2 days later. Myriad Self-Giant Hand, rise. Fang Yuan activated his immortal killer move. 4 of the 8 strength path hands grabbed on 4 sides of Dang Hun Mountain as it lifted, while the other 4 lifted the base of it into the air. Dang Hun Mountain rose up rapidly. It was tens of meters away from the ground in no time. Tai Bai Yunsheng was floating in the air. Seeing this, he was stunned. At a stone nest, He Lu Lan looked from far away at the huge Dang Hun Mountain floating in the air. She muttered to herself, in such a short time, he got stronger again. It was much easier now for Fang Yuan to lift Dang Hun Mountain. Not only because he was using 8 strength path hands, but because he had already completely fused pulling mountain immortal Gu into the killer move Myriad Self, making it part of its core. Originally, Myriad Self's core was Cleanse Soul Immortal Gu. After Cleanse Soul Immortal Gu was starving, it could not be used anymore, so he used Self-Strength instead. But now, the core of Myriad Self-Killer move became 2 Gu, one was Self-Strength, the other was Pulling Mountain. Don't just stare, take it. Fang Yuan shouted. Tai Bai Yunxing quickly opened up his immortal aperture, as the 8 strength path giant hands brought Dang Hun Mountain into his blessed land slowly. Alright, next, the land spirit will lead you to collect several resources in the blessed land. Fang Yuan said. Tai Bai Yunxing nodded, under Little Who Immortal's control, he vanished in front of Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan landed on the ground. Without Dang Hun Mountain, the center of the blessed land was very empty. He sat there and closed his eyes, mobilizing Time Luck Immortal Gu as countless mortal Gu flew up from within his immortal aperture, his dead land. As beads of green grape immortal essence were consumed, with Time Luck Immortal Gu as the core, and the surrounding mortal Gu acting as support, a huge white gold mist of light was formed. The mist of light entered the air, flying across the gray sky for several li, towards a group of Gu master captives. These captives were from Dongfang tribe. Earlier, they were imprisoned by Fang Yuan in an underground cell. Now, they were taken out and placed in his immortal aperture. As the mist of light covered them, these captives screamed in shock, "What is this thing?" They had an ominous feeling within themselves. They wanted to dodge but they were restrained and could not move. The white gold mist of light circulated around them, initially slowly but growing faster. It soon spun quickly as it formed a spiral of white gold light. The white gold light spiral circulated for a while before exploding into a white gold colored light pillar. Immortal Killer Move, Time Assist Luck. The light pillar penetrated out of Fang Yuan's immortal aperture. It went all the way up along Fang Yuan's spine, until it shot out of Fang Yuan's head, into the sky. After several breaths of time, the light pillar vanished. At the same time, the white gold spiral in Fang Yuan's immortal aperture was consumed. On the rotting ground, there were corpses of all the Dongfang tribe captives. These corpses were all dried out and old. They were originally young people, but they were now extremely aged. Time Assist Luck had such an effect. It snatched the lifespan of others to give the Gu Immortal a temporary boost in his own luck. I won't give in. You killed us, you murderer, we will haunt you even as ghosts. Uvels Upt. Tes on NOV/L/BI.com. For your own selfish reasons, you murdered us innocent souls. You are a sinner, you are a murderer. Ah, eat him, eat him. Suddenly, a large number of vengeful remnant spirits came out of Fang Yuan's body. They twisted around his soul and were attacking him fiercely. Fang Yuan snickered. His tall immortal zombie body was unmoving like a mountain. The soul in his body had already counterattacked, colliding with these souls. These souls were very tattered and were mortal souls. It was reasonable to say that they were not worth mentioning, but at this point, Fang Yuan's soul was being suppressed by them. Thankfully, they did not have intelligence, they could not cooperate. Fang Yuan moved his soul and killed them one by one. He paid a huge price but he exterminated these souls. After the battle, Fang Yuan's soul was 30% of its original size. It was dim and resembled a flickering candle. It was barely alight. Its injuries could be said to be severe. But thankfully, he had Guts Gu. He crushed Air Sac Gu one after another. The Guts Gu inside broke as well, turning into the purest form of nourishment for his soul to strengthen and recover. A moment later, Fang Yuan's soul completely recovered. It was back at its peak condition. Compared to before, his soul was more refined. It was like forged steel, becoming more compact and durable. The backlash of remnant souls is Time Assist Luck Killer Move's greatest weakness, but after the soul battle ends, when my soul recovers, there is some advantage of refining the soul. Fang Yuan could clearly discern the benefits and weaknesses of this move. Chapter 823, Advantages Outweigh Disadvantages, Time Assist Luck. Time Assist Luck increased one's luck without expending one's own lifespan, but it had two big disadvantages. First was the backlash of the remnant souls. Because of the Immortal Killer Move, the remnant souls become extremely fierce, and in the dangerous battle of souls, one could not use any soul path methods and had to rely on their own soul to battle. Thus, even soul path Gu immortals often suffered severe damage to their soul after the battle of souls. Second was that time assist luck could only be used once a month, and this related to the amount of time experienced by the immortal body. What was meant by the time experienced by the immortal body? Blessed lands and grotto heavens had different rates of time flow compared to the outside world. For instance, one day in the outside world could be over 15 days in the blessed land. If the Gu immortal was in the outside world, the time experienced by their immortal body was 1 day. If they were in the blessed land, the same time in the outside world experienced by the immortal body would be 15 days. The length of a Gu immortal's lifespan was the total amount of time their immortal body experienced. Fang Yuan took back time luck immortal Gu as well as the other mortal Gu, and subconsciously gazed upwards. It's a pity that I don't have luck inspection immortal Gu and cannot inspect the change in my luck. I also can't tell how effective the killer move, time assist luck is. Oh. Right, I can't inspect myself, but I can inspect others. Fang Yuan suddenly thought of a way. He had luck inspection mortal Gu, although it could not be used to see his own luck, he had connected his luck with Yi Fan, Han Li, and Hong Yi. The series of luck connections made the luck of the four of them the same, like 4 bowls of water with the same volume. The water in Fang Yuan's bowl had suddenly increased. This rise would immediately be divided into 4 portions, 1 portion would be left in his bowl while the other 3 portions would flow to the other 3 people. Fang Yuan could not inspect his own luck, but he could inspect the other 3. After all, these 3 were still mortals at present. Southern border. In a lush forest on a mountain, Yi Fan was quickly moving along the ground like an ape. He occasionally jumped over boulders, and at times climbed and grabbed long green vines flying between the tall trees. He was extremely fast, as if he was truly possessed by an ape. In fact, fine ape hair grew on his nose, cheeks, arms and other areas. Yi Fan's eyes were also not white and black, instead they had turned golden. He was staring at a blue speck of light in front of him with a slightly anxious look. This blue face Gu is truly slippery, it is so hard to catch. No, I must catch it, it is rank 3 Gu of transformation path and can change a male Gu master's appearance. I am currently under an arrest warrant, this Gu worm is even more important to me. Suddenly, a strange itch was felt at the bottom of Yi Fan's heart. Yi Fan glanced quickly at his body and saw his arms were already covered in thick ape hair, his heart sank, damn it. I forcibly activated the killer move ape transformation, the longer I maintain this killer move, the more ape hair there will be, and once it goes beyond the limit, I might turn into a half-man and half-ape monster. But if I stop this killer move, my speed will definitely fall and I will only be able to watch this wild blue face Gu leave. Right as Yi Fan was in a dilemma, the sky rapidly changed, as dark clouds covered the sky, and soon, bean-sized raindrops started to fall. In a dozen breaths of time, the drops of rain had turned into torrential rain. The rainstorm obstructed his vision, Yi Fan had completely lost the blue light he had barely been able to chase. Damn it, I spent several days and nights, and now all my effort has failed. Sigh, without a Gu worm specially meant to capture wild Gu, it is really difficult to capture them with just bare hands. Yi Fan was soon soaked thoroughly, inwardly in great disappointment. Crackle. Right at this time, a bolt of lightning struck a large tree on the mountain. The tree fell down, fire burned and soon spread, unable to be extinguished by the rainstorm. On this tung oil mountain, there are tung trees everywhere and they are very combustible. I need to quickly leave this place, otherwise it will be too late once there is a wildfire. Yi Fan quickly left. After 15 minutes, he was standing at the base of the mountain looking at the wildfire spreading wildly over the mountain, the rainstorm unable to extinguish it. He sighed and was about to leave when suddenly a blue light swayed into his vision. When Yifan saw it clearly, his eyes opened wide. It was that blue-face Gu. But this blue-face Gu had dense soot over its body and was clearly heavily injured. Yifan quickly hurried over and grabbed it. Normally, a Gu master would face stubborn resistance from a Gu worm's will when they refined wild Gu, but as the blue-face Gu was too weak, Yifan was able to refine it within a few breaths of time. I had never imagined I would obtain blue-face Gu like this. Yifan sighed inwardly at the mysteriousness of fate. He was fully satisfied with this pleasant surprise and was about to leave, when suddenly his body stiffened like a stone statue. After the blue-face Gu, there were still 3 wild Gu worms that had escaped the fire and were flying in his direction in heavily injured states. Western Desert. On a rocky beach, all sizes of rocks were piled up and spread over the surroundings, forming a natural rock field. Hanli was breathing heavily as he ran over the broken rocks, his legs hurt badly but he endured it. "Brat, put down those 3 nodding stones." A rank 3 Gu master shouted in fury from behind while in fierce pursuit of Hanli. Hanli ran even faster when he heard the voice. In his vision, a tall pile of rocks was getting bigger and bigger. Hanli involuntarily showed a happy expression. These rocks were extremely large and firm, with gaps of all sorts of sizes in between the rocks. This was a very good hiding place. The rank 3 Gu master who was chasing Hanli, however, was exceptionally anxious. Hanli was only a young man with a weak and thin physique. He would be able to leave the Gu master's vision soon if he entered the gaps. The previous intense battle had consumed the primeval essence of the rank 3 Gu master. He was not able to even activate rank 3 movement Gu and had no choice but to chase him by simply running. Damn it, do I let him slip away like this? No, I am a grand rank 3 Gu master elder, while he is only a mortal. If I let him escape and word of this matter spreads, how am I going to hold my reputation up in the future? Those 3 nodding stones are materials to refine rank 5 Gu, they are very valuable. If they were sold. The rank 3 Gu master was extremely unwilling. He gritted his teeth fiercely and finally used his trump card. His mind blanked out briefly, as his lifespan decreased by 2 years in exchange for 20% rank 3 primeval essence. He used 10% to activate a movement Gu worm. His speed increased sharply and in several breaths, he was right behind Hanli. He used the other 10% primeval essence to punch out a stone fist. The stone fist could definitely kill Hanli if it struck. However, a bright light flashed past the Gu master's eyes as he dispelled this thought. On one hand, he was afraid of shattering the nodding stones with Hanli, and on other hand, he really hated Hanli and wanted to properly torture him to death to vent his anger. Therefore, this stone fist brushed past Hanli's right leg and crashed into the tall and sturdy rock pile. A series of muffled sounds echoed, dust swirled and shattered rocks splattered everywhere. Hanli received a heavy injury, his right leg was directly fractured. However, he had a firm disposition and knew his life was hanging by a thread right now. He screamed before using all his strength to jump forward. His thin and small body allowed him to land right into a crevice. The rank 3 Gu master was startled. He had used up all his primeval essence and had no more ways now. Was he really going to let this brat escape alive? But soon, the Gu master relaxed. Hanli had jumped into a crevice, but his head had hit a wall and was bleeding, and with the serious fracture of his right leg, he was dizzy and could not even climb up. "Brat, you really can run. Run, run more." The rank 3 Gu master slowly walked closer to Hanli with a vicious expression. Hanli was filled with despair. He subconsciously stepped back, but his speed was extremely slow. The rank 3 Gu master thought of countless cruel methods to torture Hanli as he entered the crevice with a sinister smile. Boom! Suddenly, the many large rocks forming the crevice collapsed above the rank 3 Gu master. The rank 3 Gu master's sternum broke and his lungs were pierced. He struggled for a while before dying. Hanli was left stupefied on the spot. Central Continent. Universal Life Academy. The Gu refinement competition had already entered its final round. 16 young Gu masters were sitting cross-legged on the plaza, and under everyone's gazes, started refining Gu simultaneously. The Refinement Path Convention of Central Continent was already approaching. Universal Life Academy might only be a small sect, but every sect of Central Continent had a quota for participating in the Refinement Path Convention. Universal Life Academy only had 3 places reserved, and 1 each was given to a disciple, elder and external elder of the sect. Now, 16 Gu master disciples were fighting for the sole reservation. This competition will soon reach the crucial moment. Right, there is one final barrier in refining Red Face Gu, which tests the Gu master's subtle control of their senses. Their hands and mind must be coordinated to maintain control over the fire. Look, Qiao Yu has already reached this barrier. He is intentionally slowing down the speed of Gu refinement to have sufficient time to react. Spectating disciples discussed and analyzed the situation in soft voices. After a while, 2 others entered this final barrier. As expected, they are Xie Lan and Lu Wen. These 2 along with Qiao Yu are publicly recognized as the 3 ultimately most talented elite disciples in refinement path of our academy. The final winner of this competition should be from among these 3. New N0vel chapters are published on N0V/E/LB/IN/co/M. Maybe there is a dark horse. This is not possible. Cultivating refinement path requires large amounts of practice and is not a matter of instant success. Even if someone secretly practices, this process would also waste enormous amounts of resources, and the records of buying Gu refinement materials cannot be concealed. On the raised platform, the academy principal was sitting at the front with 6 elders beside him, watching the competition to prevent any cheating from occurring. Time flowed by. There was a 4th young Gu master, then a 5th and a 6th who stepped into this final crucial step one after the other. We can basically confirm it now, the winner will be from among Qiao Yu, Xie Lan and Lu Wen. As long as they don't make a mistake, they are the top 3. Other Gu masters have also reached the final step, but it is already too late. While the spectators discussed outside the plaza, the elders were also secretly communicating. Chapter 824, Blood Poison Carria Flowers, 7th Calamity. The Refinement Hall elder spent all his effort to nurture the 3 of them. They are at the upper level even in Central Continent. They are truly prized students of a brilliant master. An elder praised. I am flattered, I am flattered. These 3 children have talent, but it was mostly because of Lord Principal's support, otherwise, they would not have become so familiar with the refinement steps. The Refinement Hall elder was very modest. The academy principal did not speak. The Refinement Hall elder shifted the topic as he spoke about Hong Yi, speaking of which, your son, Hong Yi has such talent as well, he is in the finals now. Most notably, he is not a disciple of the Refinement Hall. It is very impressive that he managed to attain such results despite having little practice. All of the elders looked at each other. They were secretly despising the Refinement Hall elder for bootlicking the principal so smoothly, but they all voiced out their agreement with him. Indeed, indeed. With Lord Principal's bloodline in him, how can he be weak? When he first entered the academy, he was still inconspicuous. But now, Hong Yi is already the leader of the disciples. In the future, he is sure to be a leader somewhere. The principal snorted, you are praising him because he is my son, do you think I cannot tell? He could get into the finals because of his dog's hit luck. He tries out everything without putting hard work into any of them. By learning everything, he is also being unskilled at every aspect. After this competition, send him into 7 days of seclusion, so that he can reflect on himself. The elders were silent. Lord Principal had several sons. Hong Yi was the most capable one, but he was the son of a concubine and did not have a good relationship with his father. He had a rebellious nature and was thus often suppressed by the principal. This time, Hong Yi signed up for the refinement path competition behind his father's back. At the moment, Hong Yi's forehead was covered in sweat as he looked at the lump of fire in his hands. In the fire, the Gu worm was gradually taking form. I am finally at the last step. It is a pity that I wasted too much time. Hong Yi observed the others while in the midst of his refinement. He saw that Chao Yu, Xia Lan and Lu Wen's flames had shrunken to the size of wicks. Hong Yi knew that he had no hope of winning. In truth, he had refinement path talent greater than Chao Yu and the other two. But he practiced very little. One reason was because this was not his main path. He could not divert too much attention to it as he lacked in the time he could invest. Secondly, he had no financial support. Even though he had some fortuitous encounters, his father did not support him. He could only cultivate his main path. Damn it! Father has already noticed my intention. I want my mother's memorial tablet to be placed in the ancestral hall, but father follows the ancestral rules strictly. Why would he allow it? He wants me to be like my other siblings, obeying him without question, and not challenging his prestige. But Hong Clan had been really unfair to my mother. This is injustice. If I do not seek justice for my mother, I am not a filial son. Forget it. At this point, I can only take a risk and make a shot in the dark. The refinement of this red-face Gu is usually completed in an instant in a refinement path master's hands. But the fire is hard to control, thus the others are slowing down at this step. I cannot complete it instantly, of course, but if I can surpass their speed, I will have a chance of winning. Hong Yi made up his mind. He immediately acted on it. Be it the disciples around him or the elders on the stage, they quickly noticed Hong Yi's actions. Everyone shook their heads. He is so naive. Hong Yi is taking a risk, but how can he turn this around? Unless he is a refinement path master. He is obviously not a refinement path master. He is seeking his own doom. Look, his fire has gone out of control already. Oh no! Hong Yi cried out in dismay. The flame in his hands was flickering, it was making cracking sounds as it burned. It was going to explode. The force of the explosion would not be scary. After all, this was a test from the academy. They were concerned about the disciples' safety. I failed. Hong Yi's heart sank. The flame in his hand had completely lost control. It even flew away from his hand. At once, Hong Yi felt extremely bitter. I still failed in the end. Achoo. He had been practicing Gu refinement for the last few nights. He had been putting in last-minute effort but had gotten a cold in the process. Because he relaxed himself now, and his body was full of sweat, he could not help but sneeze. His sneeze blew at the fire and the flames extinguished at once. A refined red-face Gu fell onto the concrete floor of the stage with a loud sound. I refined it successfully. Hong Yi was stunned. Everyone stopped their movements on the spot. Guh. An elder who was drinking tea spat out all of the tea in his mouth. Even the academy principal, Hong Yi's father, stood up subconsciously. He had a strange expression. He was stunned. This sneeze actually worked like the method of a refinement path master, causing the refinement's final step to be completed in an instant, creating the red-face Gu. Hong Yi, this lad, just what kind of dog's hit luck is this? Who immortal blessed land? Fang Yuan, Tai Bai Yun Sheng, who immortal land spirit and He Lu Lan were floating in the air, awaiting the start of the earthly calamity. What earthly calamity would it be this time? Little Hu Immortal looked at her master. Fang Yuan touched her little head. Don't worry, this time, the situation is different from last time. We have 3 Gu immortals here, and Dang Hun Mountain along with lots of our resources were moved out, the blessed land's foundation is greatly depleted. Furthermore, I raised my own luck, I have an 80% confidence of getting through this calamity. The way of heaven was to take away surpluses while replenishing deficits, it emphasized on balance. The deeper the foundation of the blessed land, the stronger the heavenly tribulation or earthly calamity. Thus, Fang Yuan moved Dang Hun Mountain and all the other precious resources into Tai Bai Yun Sheng's immortal aperture. This way, with less fortune in the blessed land, the heavenly tribulation or earthly calamity would be much weaker. In Imperial Court blessed land, he learned about the power of luck path. He knew that the stronger his own luck was, the weaker the heavenly tribulation or earthly calamity would be. One could say that Fang Yuan had done all the preparation possible. But even so, there was still a 20% chance that he would fail in resisting the earthly calamity. The reason was that there were an immense variety of earthly calamities, it was unknown which one was coming. Earthly calamities have all sorts of strange effects, even those rare and unheard of abilities were possible, even those that had never been seen before could appear, the difficulty of resisting them would be much greater. As they waited, earth chi started to rumble as the earthly calamity began. Stalks upon stalks of flowers pierced the ground of Hu immortal blessed land as they grew rapidly, in a few breaths' time, bright red stalks of flowers grew all around Hu immortal blessed land. This is. The immortals hesitated, the flowers were blooming in all directions. These flowers were huge, they had the size of a person's face. The petals were soft and delicate like silk, they were layered on top of each other, each flower had at least 6 layers of petals, and around 100 petals in total. This is the blood poison carrier. Fang Yuan said in a quiet tone. He recognized this flower, he felt very helpless. To think that this earthly calamity was a type of blood calamity. These blood poison carrier flowers only took 10 breaths of time from budding to wilting. When they wilt, their petals and roots would turn into a pool of poison. The poisonous blood would pollute the blessed land, causing widespread damage to life, leading to great losses. Only wood path techniques were specialized at dealing with these blood poison carrier flowers. Other than that, any blood poison carrier that was destroyed would also turn into a pool of poisonous blood. But in fact, even if Fang Yuan had wood path techniques, it was too late. There were so many blood poison carrier flowers all over Hu immortal blessed land, what could he do to stop them? Thus, even though there were 3 Gu immortals on his side, facing the vast sea of blood poison carrier flowers, they were helpless. The blood poison carrier flowers quickly wilted, as poisonous blood covered the surface of the ground like a layer of water. The water's surface was not deep, about the height of a person's ankles, but it was all over Hu immortal blessed land. The lake at the eastern part of the blessed land had been completely polluted. The fox groups and wolf groups at the western part of the blessed land faced countless deaths, corpses were lying in the pool of blood, their blood flowed out and added to the pool of poisonous blood. The rockmen slaves in the southern part were rudely awakened. Many of the rock men had blood poison carrier flowers growing on their bodies. After the flower wilted, poisonous blood flowed out as the rock men cried out in pain, but few of them died. Tai Bai Yunxing felt a chill as he looked at the sky, sighing, heaven really wouldn't give us an easy time. Fang Yuan smiled bitterly. He Lulan consoled him, tribulations are hard to endure, the current situation is quite good already. Looking at the poisonous blood all over the blessed land, even though most of the land is polluted and your losses are severe, the earth chi has already settled down, this earthly calamity is over already. Little Hu immortal's eyes were watery, Master, we have to clear up the poisonous blood. The soil is polluted, it will not produce anything for the next few years. Our pink flower rabbits, wolf groups, and fox groups suffered great losses in numbers. Fang Yuan made a move immediately. He used pulling water immortal Gu to siphon the poisonous blood into his own immortal aperture. His immortal aperture was a dead land, it was full of death energy and had no life, the poisonous blood could not pollute anything. But the poisonous blood was all over the blessed land, the range was too huge, even if Fang Yuan used pulling water immortal Gu, the efficiency was too low. LL Rise at N0VE/LBI/. C. M. He felt some regret inwardly. If I knew this, I would not have fused pulling mountain immortal Gu into the killer move, myriad self, I would have fused pulling water immortal Gu first. That way, my efficiency would be higher, and my immortal essence expenditure would be lower. Man proposes, heaven disposes, this saying fit the current situation. After spending a day and a night, Fang Yuan finally extracted all of the poisonous blood in this blessed land and moved it into his immortal aperture. During this period, he worked without a break, he did not rest or sleep. He spent quite a sum of green grape immortal essence during the process. Removing the pollution of the poisonous blood could not be dragged on. The longer he took, the deeper the pollution, and the greater the aftereffects. Even though the poisonous blood was removed, the soil on the surface of the blessed land was entirely poisonous, squeezing it with one's hand would produce some bloody red mush. If it was not settled, in several days, this layer of soil would completely rot, turning into poisonous blood and polluting soil in other areas. Fang Yuan immediately made up his mind, removing this layer of soil. Even though Tai Bai Yunsheng had landscape as before to restore the land back to its original state, Fang Yuan did not adopt that method. Thus, Fang Yuan, Tai Bai Yunsheng, and He Lu Lan worked together, spending several days and finally getting rid of the soil layer. Fang Yuan moved all of the poisonous soil into his immortal aperture, even with his immortal zombie body, he was extremely exhausted. There was a lot of work to do. Looking at it from another perspective, it was a good thing that Fang Yuan removed the north area of the blessed land previously. Chapter 825, Developing the Blessed Land, Lu Lan comes to a realization. Hu immortal blessed land's seventh earthly calamity was finally over. Afterwards, looking back at this earthly calamity, there was really nothing dangerous. But this earthly calamity targeted Fang Yuan's weakness, it was quite unpleasant. Fang Yuan and the other two Gu immortals could only watch the earthly calamity develop, making as much compensation as possible afterwards. After the earthly calamity ended, He Lu Lan continued to stay in Hu immortal blessed land, this place was the safest to stay in for her right now. Under Fang Yuan's arrangement, she continued to use strength Qi immortal Gu, assisting the hairy man slaves in the stone nests, refining large numbers of air sac Gu. Right now, there was a mountain of air sac Gu in the storage. Air sac Gu was a one-time consumable Gu, it was paired with guts Gu and sold together. Before the tribulation, Fang Yuan had made full use of He Lu Lan, the three stone nests were refining Gu crazily, creating large numbers of air sac Gu. Right now, there was a high number of air sac Gu, the production of guts Gu could not keep up. Fang Yuan changed his refinement plan, he made one stone nest refine air sac Gu, while the other two refined mortal star thought Gu. This made He Lu Lan grit her teeth in anger. Because their earlier deal was, before the tribulation, He Lu Lan would help the hairy men with the refinement of air sac Gu. After these air sac Gu were used to store guts Gu and sold for profit, all of it would go to Fang Yuan. Now that Hu immortal blessed land had gone through the tribulation, from now on, the sale of guts Gu would include He Lu Lan's share of the profit. He Lu Lan lacked money too. Or more accurately speaking, any Gu immortal who had just ascended into an immortal like her would lack money. Especially now, when Fairy Li Shan's wealth was dwindling, she could not support He Lu Lan's cultivation anymore, He Lu Lan's desire towards immortal essence stones was at an all-time high. But just when she wanted to start building and accumulating her foundation, Fang Yuan shrunk the production of air sac Gu. He Lu Lan was helpless. N/W novel chapt. The 3 stone nests were Fang Yuan's possession. He could refine whatever he wanted to, he did not need to get her input. But was He Lulan someone who gave up easily? She found Fang Yuan and talked to him, hoping that he would allocate at least 2 stone nests to refining Airsac Gu, so as to increase the sale of Guts Gu. Fang Yuan attended to her enthusiastically, telling her about his difficulties with much emotion. Fairy Lulan, I also want to increase production. I have a huge headache right now. You've also seen how many hairy men I've lost in the production of Airsac Gu. If I want to replenish the number of hairy men, the cost will go up. Meanwhile, refining Star Thought Gu is much milder and would cause fewer deaths in the hairy men. At this point, I've lost about 30% of my hairy men. If this goes on, I'll need to buy hairy man slaves. But you've just witnessed who immortal blessed land undergoing tribulation, the losses were very great, now it's necessary to be more sparing. He Lulan heard this and frowned, she felt vexed inwardly, she almost lost control and shouted, you're bullshitting me. Even if He Lulan did not know about Fang Yuan's total assets, she knew this. Before the tribulation, Fang Yuan had already transferred all of his precious resources into Tai Bai Yunsheng's immortal aperture, he had no great losses. Meanwhile, in Jade Pool Blessed Land, he seized so many resources and even obtained Dong Fang Chang Fan's soul, it could be said that he was one of the biggest winners out of the people in Taichio. The sale of Guts Gu was very much in demand, most of the profits went to Fang Yuan. No matter how poor Fang Yuan was, he could definitely afford to buy a group of hairy man slaves. Fang Yuan was lamenting about poverty to He Lulan, seeing that she was unhappy, he continued smiling, saying, actually, in my opinion, my earlier suggestion is quite appropriate. We can pool a huge fund and buy experiences and knowledge of raising hairy men, before buying the slaves and raising them ourselves. This is a long-term investment, it is extremely worth it in the long run. Fang Yuan mentioned his suggestion again as He Lulan sighed in her mind. Fang Yuan's plan was advantageous to all 4 of them. But the first time he mentioned it, why did Fairy Li Shan object immediately? Because once this plan worked out, Fang Yuan was the biggest winner. This provided him too much help. Among the 4 of them, Fang Yuan needed hairy man slaves the most, he had the stone nests and could use them to their greatest value. Fang Yuan's cultivation plan involved the refinement of large numbers of mortal Gu. But He Lulan, Fairy Li Shan, and Tai Bai Yunsheng did not have such a need. If this plan succeeded, He Lulan and the others would need to invest time and money into raising hairy men. The best use of this was to sell hairy man slaves. But their immortal apertures were not suitable for raising hairy men, meanwhile, Hu Immortal Blessed Land was a much better location. Not only could Fang Yuan sell hairy men slaves and have the greatest advantage in raising them, he could even use them to refine Gu and sell large numbers of mortal Gu. Precisely because of this, Fairy Li Shan rejected him. Fang Yuan was developing too quickly, an experienced Gu immortal like Fairy Li Shan could not allow it any further. Even though they were allies, the Snowy Mountain Alliance would expire eventually. After cooperating with Fang Yuan so many times, would He Lulan and Fairy Li Shan be unclear about how unscrupulous and ruthless this demonic schemer was? He Lulan sighed, her brows were tightly knitted, she did not continue the conversation, she turned around and left. Fang Yuan smiled as he sent her off and watched her leave, he shouted, this is not an urgent matter, Fairy, do give it some thought. He Lulan was flying in the air as she inwardly scoffed at these words, consider what? I don't believe that you can keep this up. You are only using 1 stone nest to refine Airsac Gu, the sale of Guts Gu will fall by half. This way, your monthly revenue will also shrink greatly. You spend much more money than me each month, I don't believe that you can endure it. Oh. Wait, no. After a few breaths, He Lulan's flying speed slowed down. Even though he is refining less air sac gu, Fang Yuan has a huge batch in his inventory. He can totally use this batch to keep up with the sale of guts gu, or even sell multiple times the current amount. He Lulan flew slower and slower, her heart was turning colder. This is a deep scheme from Fang Yuan, he was aiming this at me. His monthly revenue would not fall, it could even go up. What about me? All of the air sac gu in the inventory are refined by me, but according to our earlier transaction, I cannot profit from them. Meanwhile, Little Ant has a lot of problems to deal with now. Fang Yuan is using this timing and taking advantage of me. Oh, how can I cause more problems to Little Ant now? She has already helped me enough. He Lulan's heart felt chilly. She returned to the stone nests, seeing the 3 majestic buildings, she jolted to awareness. Compared to Fang Yuan, I have many flaws, there are many things that I am worse in. I have the great strength true martial physique, Fang Yuan is only an immortal zombie, but unknowingly, he has already gone far ahead of me. I thought that my scheming and plotting ability was good, but Fang Yuan has fathomless depths, he is much shrewder. I pride myself in having outstanding battle strength, but Fang Yuan's myriad self can fight rank 7. My greatest weakness is that I do not have economic support. Gu immortal cultivation is not just about fighting, management is the foundation. In this aspect, I am way behind Fang Yuan. Thinking of this, He Lulan stretched out her arm and gave herself a few slaps. It is time to wake up. He Lulan's face was burning from pain, but her eyes were sharp like lightning, her expression was firm as steel. From a young age, I was nurtured as the successor to the tribe leader. As a mortal Gu master, I had no lack of resources, I did not have to manage resources, thus I lacked awareness in this aspect. Fang Yuan, I have to thank him for awakening my perception of this. Indeed, the best teacher is often your strongest enemy. I have decided, my first step currently is to become truly independent. He Lulan was truly a capable genius, she realized her own shortcomings and had the courage to acknowledge them, attempting to make changes. After she gained awareness, she did not approach Fang Yuan anymore. She placed her focus on herself, finding businesses that were suitable for her immortal aperture to develop, those that could gain the most profits. This way, even if only one stone nest was refining air sac gu, it was not a problem. Because now, she had much more time to learn and accumulate her foundation, to think about how she could earn a living for herself. Fang Yuan was extremely busy. He first took Dang Hun Mountain out of Tai Bai Yun Sheng's immortal aperture, and returned it to the center of Hu immortal blessed land. Next, he started creating new homes for the dragonfish and air bubble fish. Even though the poisonous blood was drained out and the surface of the corrupted soil was removed, the remaining soil was still light red in color. If one gripped it hard, blood would flow out of it. Fang Yuan decided to reorganize the entire place. This was a huge project. First he dug around the original lakes and ponds. Next, he started setting up gu worms and forming gu formations at the center of the soil. From the base of each gu formation, he purchased large amounts of fertile soils and filled the ground with it. The new soils were classified into different types. In the lake that raised dragonfish, Fang Yuan used dragon scale soil. This type of soil was grainy and tough, viewed from afar, it resembled layers of dragon scales. In fact, it was the soil that dragon-type desolate beasts, ancient desolate dragons, or even immemorial desolate dragons lived on. It was injected with the aura of dragons. Dragonfish living in the lake made with dragon scale soil would have greater urge to procreate. The lake that raised the air bubble fish was made with jade root soil. This soil was icy cold when held, and if it was squeezed tightly, it would turn into jade. Ordinary jade root soil would form qi veins that resembled the blood vessels of humans. They also looked like the roots of ginseng. That was also a reason for its name. When air bubble fish lived in such an environment, their lifespan would be increased greatly, and they would be much more vigorous. Because of the soil, the areas that the dragonfish and air bubble fish lived in were called the Dragon Scale Lake and the Jade Root Lake. These two lakes were in the eastern part of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. They were the largest and second largest lakes. Dragon Scale Lake was the largest. There was a large number of dragonfish inside. There was even a desolate beast dragonfish. On top of Jade Root Lake, there was a thick layer of clouds. There was star fragment grass growing on the clouds, forming a plain of clouds. Groups of starlight fireflies ate star fragment grass. They danced in the air on the plain, forming the scene of a sky with beautiful specks of starlight. Chapter 826, New Dao Marks, Deeper Foundation. Fang Yuan had also placed starlight fireflies in Tai Bai Yun Sheng's immortal aperture. He had also moved a portion of the star fragment grass in. Now that they had been merged together once again, they recovered their original scale. The poisonous blood from the blood poison carrier flowers had only contaminated the ground. It had not caused the slightest harm to the star fragment grass in the sky. Dragon Scale Lake and Jade Root Lake were placed opposite each other at a distance. Many small lakes were dug up between the two large lakes, as well as in the surroundings, like they were stars in the sky surrounding a moon each. These small lakes and pools did not use any special soils. Dragon Scale soil and Jade Root soil were Gu refinement materials. Although they were not immortal materials, but with such great quantity, enough to construct two large lakes, Fang Yuan had spent quite a sum. Some remaining water wolves and shark fin wolves lived in these small lakes. The shark fin wolf desolate beast that Fang Yuan had subdued also moved around here, eating the fish in these small lakes when it was hungry. There were large numbers of blue jade carps in the pools and lakes. These blue jade carps could remain alive stubbornly in harsh conditions. Even the poisonous blood could not kill them. Instead, it caused a portion of them to undergo a mutation, becoming blood jade carps. The price of these blood jade carps was several times that of blue jade carps. In the western part of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan had followed a set pattern, digging soil, arranging Gu formations, and using charcoal stones to construct a large lake. However, this lake did not have even a drop of water. On the contrary, hot air rose with the charcoal stones covering the lake bed. When wind blew, the black-gray charcoal stones shone with a red light. Fang Yuan named this lake Charcoal Lake. It was the second best breeding ground for eerie fire dragon pythons. The optimal method was used in Dongfang tribe's headquarters, the arrangement in Jade Pool Blessed Land. Fang Yuan knew this optimal method from Dongfang Changfan's soul. It could be said that he was extremely clear of the arrangement. But it was a pity that Fang Yuan's wealth could not support it. In particular, the amount of money required at the earlier stages was too high. Fang Yuan considered it carefully and chose to use the second best method of charcoal stones to construct the nest for the eerie fire dragon pythons. He placed all the eerie fire dragon pythons inside and let them develop. Fang Yuan moved away, and at every set distance, he dug a small lake. He did not use any special soils, and after setting up simple Gu formations, he poured all the poisonous blood taken into his immortal aperture into them. Under the effect of isolation from the Gu formations, these lakes of poisonous blood would only seep out a little every year, contaminating the surrounding soil. In the entire western part of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Fang Yuan dug hundreds of small blood lakes. Why did Fang Yuan do so? This related to the connection between heavenly tribulations or earthly calamities and the blessed land. Good fortune is hidden within bad, bad fortune lurks within good. The deeper the blessed land's foundation, the greater the fortune, and the stronger the heavenly tribulation or earthly calamity, and the more they would target such fortune. For instance, the previous earthly calamity of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, a desolate beast swamp crab carrying gruel mud immortal Gu, was targeted at the most valuable part of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Dang Hun Mountain. The result was that Dang Hun Mountain gradually started turning into a pile of gruel mud. It was barely rescued by Fang Yuan from its death. Heaven was fair and paid attention to balance. If you had a special superiority in one aspect and attracted heaven's envy, the heavenly tribulation or earthly calamity would weaken you. Naturally, there were too many types of tribulations and calamities. This rule was not absolute and one could only say that the probability was high. This was the embodiment of bad fortune lurks within good. After the swamp crab earthly calamity, Hu Immortal Blessed Land had, in fact, gained large amounts of enslavement path Dao marks as well as small amounts of earth path Dao marks. The higher the enslavement path Dao marks, the easier it was to control the living beings raised in the blessed land and the higher their reproduction. Rock men, hairy men, fox groups, wolf groups, fish groups, and so on were among this list. This was the most superior aspect of Hu Immortal Blessed Land. After all, the original owner, Hu Immortal, was an enslavement path Gu Immortal. Among the Dao marks increased after every tribulation and calamity, the highest quantity would be in enslavement path Dao marks. Besides enslavement path, there were a small number of earth path Dao marks. These Dao marks could increase the fertility of the soil in Hu Immortal Blessed Land. The ground would become more firm and could absorb even more earth chi, and support Dang Hun Mountain. These Dao marks could not be inspected with ordinary methods. They merged into Hu Immortal Blessed Land and comprehensively were built into this small world, making it more outstanding. And this was the embodiment of good fortune lies within bad. Heaven and earth targeted Dang Hun Mountain, creating the swamp crab earthly calamity. But after the tribulation, Hu Immortal Blessed Land had obtained benefits. The earth path Dao marks increased, which instead caused the mountain to be better suited for the blessed land. And this earthly calamity was blood poison carria flowers. Fang Yuan inwardly guessed that this was probably sent by heaven and earth in relation to his blood path grandmaster attainment level. After getting past this calamity, Hu Immortal Blessed Land once again gained a large amount of Dao marks. Enslavement path Dao marks were still the highest in quantity, further enhancing Hu Immortal Blessed Land's specialty. At the same time, there was also many blood path Dao marks. The appearance of the blood path Dao marks undoubtedly changed Hu Immortal Blessed Land. The mutation of blue jade carps into blood jade carps was only one manifestation of this. After Fang Yuan spent a lot of effort and energy to remove the top layer of soil in Hu Immortal Blessed Land, the layer of soil exposed below already had large quantities of tender grass and exquisite flower buds growing. The grass was called blood sickle grass, and after completely maturing, the stalks would be bent like sickles, broad and with edges as sharp as a knife. And the flowers were called red axe flowers. The petals were like axe blades, they were white but gave off a hint of red light. Regarding both blood sickle grass and red axe flowers, they were excellent Gu refinement materials. Although not immortal materials, they could be used to refine rank 3 mortal Gu. Once the blood sickle grass and red axe flowers that were all over Hu Immortal Blessed Land matured, they would be in astonishing quantity and act as a good source of wealth. And this wealth was actually given by the last earthly calamity to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. In fact, there were many kinds of grass and flowers grown in Hu Immortal Blessed Land previously, like blue degree grass which was both blue and poisonous, water chestnut grass which were shaped like chestnuts, 6 divine grass which looked like 6 thin leaves with the feeling of jade. And also the 7 treasure flower which was in 7 colors, and the cup-shaped milk tea flower, filled with nectar that was like milk tea. However, these flowers and grasses could at most be used to refine rank 1 and rank 2 mortal Gu. Their value was far lower than blood sickle grass and red axe flowers. The poisonous blood had seeped into the soil, changing a portion of the root systems and seeds of these flowers and grasses into the seeds of blood sickle grass and red axe flowers. The key point was that the addition of blood path Dao marks remodeled Hu Immortal Blessed Land's environment, which created the foundation for blood sickle grass and red axe flowers to grow. Rank 6 Gu immortals experience an earthly calamity every 10 years, and a heavenly tribulation every 100 years. After 300 years, facing a total of 30 earthly calamities and 3 heavenly tribulations, they could advance to a rank 7 Gu immortal. Earthly calamities were weaker than heavenly tribulations. Every calamity and tribulation was a difficult test from heaven. They were filled with dangers but also filled with opportunities. The newly added Dao marks would reform the world of the blessed land to produce even more valuable resources. These resources provided the supplies required for the Gu immortals to cultivate. In the beginning, Gu immortal could only plant large numbers of ordinary grasses and flowers in the blessed land. At that time, the soil was weak, there was no water and no wind. Blue degree grass and chestnut grass would not be able to survive in this environment. After several earthly calamities, the flowers and grasses withered and died out several times. Gu immortal suffered great losses, but got new additions of wood path Dao marks and earth path Dao marks. Because of the fire calamity, the blessed land gained fire path Dao marks. Through the water calamity, there were water path Dao marks. Follow the latest novels. n/velbin.com. With these Dao marks, Gu immortal blessed land's environment was remodeled. Gu immortal could then plant blue degree grass, chestnut grass, 6 divine grass, milk tea flowers and so on. Although blessed lands were able to improve greatly with these opportunities, every earthly calamity would cause losses which would test the Gu immortal's management ability. Gu immortal weakened time and time again, her strength constantly fell, and while facing the 5th earthly calamity, she died at the hands of the blue charm lightning shadow. After Fang Yuan inherited the blessed land, he was barely able to pass the 6th calamity, the desolate beast swamp crab calamity. Now, Gu immortal blessed land had already passed 7 earthly calamities. With this last earthly calamity, Gu immortal blessed land gained blood path Dao marks, producing a living environment for blood sickle grass and red axe flowers. Experienced farmers knew what to plant in particular kinds of soil to get the best harvest. Fang Yuan managed the blessed land in accordance with the conditions, developing the strong points and avoiding the weak points. He did not let Tai Bai Yun Xing use landscape as before, instead digging the poisonous blood lakes for this reason. In fact, it is not only these flowers and grass. With these blood path Dao marks, I can raise blood-striped foxes. The blood-striped fox's reproduction rate is higher than any of the fox groups raised in Gu immortal blessed land earlier. The annual yield would be even greater, and if I buy some knowledge and experiences in raising blood-striped foxes, with some good luck, I might be able to turn them into a small source of income. However, blood-striped foxes were partway up the food chain. Fang Yuan would have to bring in some blood-striped rabbits to feed them. Then what would blood-striped rabbits eat? It would be blood sickle grass. Thus, Fang Yuan put in great effort to dig so many poisonous blood lakes. It was to use this poisonous blood as nutrition. Under the control of the Gu formations, they would seep into the soil and constantly nourish the growth of blood sickle grass and red axe flowers. To provide beneficial competition for the blood-striped foxes, Fang Yuan also planned to buy some poison-beard wolves. Previously, Gu immortal blessed land was not suitable for the growth of these poison-beard wolves. But with the contamination of poisonous blood now, Fang Yuan could raise some poison-beard wolves. There was no need for a lot of poison-beard wolves, he only required a small number of them to form a catfish effect with the blood-striped foxes. Fang Yuan was very busy, it was as if he was running around to and fro. Time flies quickly when one was busy. Almost in an instant, over half a month had passed by in Gu immortal blessed land. Fang Yuan's project of remodeling Gu immortal blessed land finally came to an end. Gu immortal blessed land was changed beyond recognition. In the eastern part, Dragon Scale Lake and Jade Root Lake mutually enhanced each other's beauty, with many small lakes and pools in the surroundings. The lakes contain dragon fish, air bubble fish, blood jade carps and blue jade carps. Beside the lakes were some numbers of shark fin wolves, water wolves and earth skin pigs. In the western part, the number of lakes had increased sharply, surpassing the eastern part. The center of the western part was fully occupied by the charcoal lake. Every set interval of distance was a small poisonous blood lake. Hundreds of blood lakes were evenly spread over the western part. Looking from a bird's eye view, it was a magnificent spectacle. Not long later, there would be fields of blood sickle grass and seas of red axe flowers here. There were small quantities of blood-striped rabbits, poison-beard wolves and blood-striped foxes living here. But blood-striped foxes were being constantly drawn in from the outside world, and their numbers were increasing day by day. Something that was worth mentioning was the desolate beast giant horned sheep. It was also placed here to prevent the desolate beast shark fin wolf in the eastern part from hunting it. Chapter 827, Fang Jiang wakes up. In the southern part of Hu Immortal Blessed Land, a small portion of rock men were still hibernating underground. Because large numbers of blood poison carrier flowers had spawned and died in their tunnels, the underground homes of these rock men would produce bloodstone ores after tens of years. The underground cave that hid Wisdom Gu was, however, restored with landscape as before. The Ji forest was looking weak, but it did not need to be cured and could dispel the poison on its own. There was even a certain chance of producing a blood Ji forest. The northern part of the Blessed Land, where the terrain was narrow and the area smaller, was set up as a breeding ground for regretful spiders. In the center of the Blessed Land was Dang Hun Mountain. Dong Fang Chang Fan's soul was locked up in Dang Hun Palace, along with the remaining dozens of Dong Fang tribesmen. Large numbers of immortal materials were placed in storerooms. 5,000 kilograms of oil water, the giant dead egg of the worldly sand gull and large numbers of air sac gu were also kept in stock. Near Dang Hun Mountain were the 3 Fang Yuan stone nests, where many hairy man slaves lived and refined gu without stopping. As for the small batch of mirror willows, they were already dead. The beggar moths which ate mirror willow leaves as food no longer had any use, and were sold off. By now, the 3 large-scale resource points, eerie fire dragon pythons, regretful spiders and dragonfish, were truly established. Instead of just storing them like before, this development ensured that the 3 resource points could grow and multiply in numbers, and be sold for profit. However, at present, these 3 resources points were still being built up in scale and could not be put into the market immediately. There were also large numbers of air sac gu in Dang Hun Palace's storage. But Fang Yuan could not put them in the market all at once and make huge profits, with Immortal Crane sect still eyeing Hu Immortal Blessed Land. The less attention it received, the better. Selling them slowly could decrease the risks and allow the profits to come steadily. The second day after Hu Immortal Blessed Land was restored, Tai Bai Yun Xing bade his farewell to Fang Yuan. He had put in a lot of effort during this time period. Without his help, Fang Yuan would require half a month longer to complete such a large project. He had not only spent a lot of effort, but also lent some immortal essence stones to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan did not have much immortal essence stones and he lacked capital during the initial investment of the renovation. Tai Bai Yun Xing gave him some immortal essence stones to make up for this shortage. Speaking of which, among the 4 who signed the Snowy Mountain Alliance, Tai Bai Yun Xing was the richest at present. He had made good progress in Eastern Sea, importing large numbers of resources into his immortal aperture, which caused his immortal aperture's foundation to be unable to keep up. The earth chi became lacking in quantity and there was instability. Just now, Tai Bai Yun Xing returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land not only to help Fang Yuan, but also for another purpose, to return to Northern Plains, place his blessed land down, absorb earth chi and also face the earthly calamity. However, it was not yet the time for the earthly calamity to appear and absorbing earth chi also required some time. When the earthly calamity struck, Fang Yuan would also have to help Tai Bai Yun Xing. Tai Bai Yunxing left who immortal blessed land, He Lu Lan, however, remained behind. Soon, Fang Yuan also left who immortal blessed land to go to Central Continent. It was because Central Continent's Refinement Path Convention was about to start. Central Continent, Fei He Mountain, Immortal Crane Sect. Clouds and fog lingered around this floating mountain, with cranes flying in between the pine forests. In an underground secret room in Immortal Crane Sect, it was damp and dark, and the walls were covered in moss. Besides a stone bed in the room, there was no other furniture. On the stone bed, a young Gu master was lying down. His face was pale as paper, but there were no injuries on his body, as if he was in a coma. It was Gu Yu Fang Jiang. A Gu worm lied motionless on Fang Jiang's chest. Suddenly, a faint light flashed in the stone room, before a Gu immortal appeared. His wide sleeves were swaying. He looked like a young man with a handsome appearance. Most eye-catching of all were his eyebrows. They were green and long, reaching down to his waist. Under the eyebrows, his gaze was dark and eerie. Lord He Feng Yang. The Gu worm lying on Fang Jiang's chest immediately moved its wings and flew up, excitedly greeting the newcomer. This Gu worm was the spirit incubating flea that contained Lord Sky Crane's soul. Lord, please heal Fang Jiang's soul, please awaken my disciple. Lord Sky Crane implored. Sky Crane, is your decision still this? He Feng Yang sighed, feeling somewhat disappointed. Why did he want Lord Sky Crane to revive using possession? It was because Lord Sky Crane was originally his subordinate and had handled many matters for him. His background and origin was clear, and he was quite capable himself. On the contrary, Gu Fang Jiang was too young, and had been forced to sacrifice himself. If he happened to hold a grievance against Immortal Crane Sect, that would not be a pleasing scenario. Sky Crane, do you know that the possession technique our Immortal Crane Sect obtained now can be considered perfect and is extremely outstanding? If you had done possession previously, perhaps the body and soul would not match and leave behind side effects. But with this possession technique, it will be like you were born that way. The body and soul would blend together and match each other. There is not even a slight amount of shortcomings. This is your luck. You can be reborn and regain the glory you once had. Heaven is bestowing you with this opportunity. Why do you not want to take it? He Feng Yang persuaded. Lord. The spirit incubating flea flapped its wings, and said in a quiet voice, please forgive me for being obstinate. Fang Jiang, he is my disciple. He resembles my past self, and this future belongs to him. If I possess him, I won't be able to face myself, to face my inner feelings. Please think of the many years of my servitude to you, and help me, Lord. You. He Feng Yang was starting to get angry. Nothing was going like he wanted recently. To save the 9 palace crane, Little Jiu, he had requested help from various people and spent large amounts of wealth, but it still was not showing much effect. Now, even his former subordinate was acting willfully and disregarding his persuasion. Everything was going wrong. This possession technique was powerful, but it had a condition. It could not be used rashly, and it was best to let the soul be in contact with the possession target's body for a long period of time before this technique was used. Lord Sky Crane had intended to possess Fang Jiang, thus had placed the spirit incubating flea in Fang Jiang's aperture. So much time had passed already, the condition for possession was already fulfilled, but Lord Sky Crane had now changed his decision. This also meant that if Lord Sky Crane wanted to possess others, he would not be able to do so in a short period of time. His soul would need to be in contact with the body of the possession target for a long time. As for Dong Fang Chang Fan possessing Dong Fang Yu Liang, he had secretly stored a part of his soul in Dong Fang Yu Liang's body. His methods were so ingenious that Dong Fang Yu Liang had not sensed anything wrong. He Feng Yang was not feeling good these days. He was feeling frustrated and agitated, and wanted to berate Lord Sky Crane. But in the end, He did not speak out the words in his thoughts, because he could not help but associate his own situation with Lord Sky Crane's. Wasn't he also like Lord Sky Crane earlier? To save little Jiu, he was determined to follow his own way and was even willing to sacrifice himself. Back then, when he was facing the hopeless situation, if not for Immortal Crane Sect's third Supreme Elder, Lord Tiger Demon helping him, there would not be He Feng Yang in the present. He Feng Yang heaved a deep sigh. All right. Since you are determined to do this, I, He Feng Yang, shall help you. This is the compensation for all the work you have done me. If later, you want to undergo possession and request me to help, it won't be free. He Feng Yang then waved his large sleeve, brushing it past Gu Fang Jiang's face. After this movement finished, He Feng Yang disappeared from the spot. Several breaths of time later, Gu Fang Jiang's soul became as firm as before, and he woke up from his coma. You are awake. The spirit incubating flea fluttered towards his eyes. Gu Fang Jiang was dazed. Master, where are we? Of course we're an Immortal Crane sect, foolish disciple. Lord Sky Crane laughed heartily. Why am I here? Gu Fang Jiang was still in confusion, mumbling. Suddenly, he shivered, a terrified expression appearing on his face. He thought of that blood pool, the terrifying memory of blood vines growing over his body when he looked into Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Aya! Gu Fang Jiang screamed and subconsciously leaped back. The back of his head struck the firm stone wall, his raised head lowered down as he fell unconscious. Lord Sky Crane. 3 days later. Immortal Crane Sect officially announced the news of Gu Fang Jiang waking up. Gu Fang Jiang appeared in front of the disciples again, outrageously having rank 5 cultivation. In the morning class, Immortal Crane Sect's leader publicly announced Gu Fang Jiang as an elder of Immortal Crane Sect. For a while, the whole sect was in shock. The former rivals of Fang Jiang, like Sun Yuanhua and others, were dumbstruck. Disciples and elite disciples were in a clamor, and elders also discussed this with each other. To assist in capturing Hu Immortal Blessed Land, Immortal Crane Sect's Gu Immortals forcibly raised Fang Jiang's cultivation to rank 5. The identity of a disciple was no longer suitable for Fang Jiang. Fang Jiang was just adapting to his new status, and was at a loss on what to do. When he walked around the sect, every disciple he met would bow to him in greeting. Among them were many elite disciples older than him. Sometimes he would see his past rivals like Sun Yuanhua, they would also pay respects to him. Many beautiful female disciples frequently flocked around Fang Jiang, some looked at him with watery eyes, while some sweetly called him Elder Fang Jiang. Compared to other elders, Fang Yuan was extremely young. It could be said that he was unique. Like stories of legends, he attracted the attention of many female disciples, some even forming crushes on him. Even Fang Jiang himself forgot his identity sometimes when he saw other elders, and would bow to these elders like a disciple. And each time this happened, the situation would turn awkward. Fortunately, Fang Jiang had Lord Sky Crane with him. Immortal Crane Sect's leader also occasionally called him over to ask about his well-being and if he was facing any problems, making him feel overwhelmed from the attention and favor. What made Gu Fang Jiang even more happy was that the sect's benefits to elders were tens of times greater than the treatment received by disciples. New St. Rise at N. Previously, the sect's higher-ups intentionally sacrificed Fang Jiang, using his life to increase the possibility of capturing Hu Immortal Blessed Land. Right now, they were showering him with status and perks, to restore his loyalty to the sect. In the end, Fang Jiang was not Fang Yuan, he was too young and had scant life experience, not having even the slightest sensation of this intention. In fact, he had no complaints towards Immortal Crane sect, and after becoming an elder, he had even more of a sense of belonging to Immortal Crane sect. As for the terrifying memory of looking into who immortal blessed land, he was subconsciously evading it, not wanting to recall it. It was only that sometimes, deep into nights, he would dream of the scene in the blood pool, recall the pain and suffering, and wake up with his body filled with cold sweat. Chapter 828, 5 Virtues Mountain, 5 Virtues Sect. On this day, Fang Jiang was returning after listening to another elder's public lecture, when he was obstructed by a disciple called Shi Hong. Elder Fang Jiang. Shi Hong bowed in greeting. Fang Jiang returned the greeting, but felt somewhat awkward inwardly. This elite disciple, Shi Hong, was older than Fang Jiang, and had originally been a senior disciple several generations above Fang Jiang. I would like to receive guidance from Elder Fang Jiang. One of the 4 entry tasks for the current Refinement Path Convention pertains to refining Earth Treasury Flower Gu. The third last step of refining this Gu requires the use of upstream grass, matched with Zen Lion's mane, supplemented by the Gu refinement method. But this disciple has always failed in this step. I would like to know what the correct Gu refinement method for this is. This. Fang Jiang was stupefied, and hesitated. His main cultivation path was enslavement path, and his battle strength when controlling cranes were at an outstanding level among mortal Gu masters. But he had entirely no understanding of refinement path. Fortunately, he had the spirit incubating flea, from which Lord Sky Crane transmitted the answer. Fang Jiang replied, "This Gu refinement technique is called one after another. Its purpose is to entwine every stalk of the upstream grass with every strand of the Zen Lion's mane. To refine Earth Treasury Flower Gu, you must weave together 100 stalks and strands within 30 breaths of time. If you go beyond this time, the fire from the Gu refinement will burn these stalks and strands to ashes. Thus, if you are not familiar with this method, you will easily fail in this refinement." Fang Jiang repeated the words of Lord Sky Crane, and the more he spoke, the calmer he became. After explaining this, he then went to explain on how to practice the one after another Gu refinement technique. Shi Hong's expression slightly changed, showing astonishment before hurriedly bowing in thanks. "Many thanks for Elder Fang Jiang's guidance, I have learned a lot. Do you still have anything you don't understand?" Fang Jiang smiled, getting addicted to this feeling of teaching. "There is no more, no more. This disciple shall take his leave." Shi Hong bowed, and left. After the two parted ways, Fang Jiang walked for a while before suddenly starting to slow down. He frowned and came to a realization: this Shi Hong did not come to truly ask for advice, it feels like the other way around, like he was intentionally trying to create difficulties for me. "Hee, you noticed it? Good, good." Lord Sky Crane smiled. Fang Jiang inwardly shouted, "Master, you already knew." "Nonsense, your background is extremely easy to probe, your age is also openly on display. Everyone knows you don't cultivate refinement path." Shi Hong, however, intentionally asked such a question. What could it be if not about trying to give you trouble? Lord Sky Crane paused here, before asking Fang Jiang, "Do you know why he was trying to create difficulties for you?" "Why?" Fang Jiang did not understand. Lord Sky Crane smiled brightly as he explained the reason: because Shi Hong likes a female disciple called Anew. And this Anew is Elder Yan Tang's daughter. Elder Yan Tang is weak, he is sidelined in Immortal Crane sect, and has had difficulties. He plans to betroth his daughter to you to form a connection, an alliance of benefits with you, the youngest elder in the history of Immortal Crane sect. Otherwise, why would he repeatedly invite you for drinking? Moreover, intentionally arrange his daughter to sit together with you every time? Ah! Fang Jiang exclaimed as he realized only at this point. He could not help but recall the beautiful appearance of Yu sitting beside him, and warmly serving him dishes. Also how she frequently proposed a toast to Fang Jiang, and how after few sips of alcohol, her face would flush red, which made her even more attractive. Do you remember now? Ha ha ha, foolish boy. Lord Sky Crane was happy to see Fang Jiang looking dazed. Clearly, the spirit of gossip was commonly held between men and women, the old and young, and even the living and dead. Fang Jiang helplessly sighed, shaking his head and saying in a weary voice, "Schemes and benefits again, I really don't like them. From now on, I shall refuse Elder Yen Tang's invitation. I am also an elder like him anyway, refusing shouldn't be considered rude." Foolish boy, which organization in this world is not held together by benefits? True feelings of warmth do exist, but they are rare, which makes them even more valuable. Lord Sky Crane sighed with emotions, don't avoid these, and especially don't refuse Elder Yen Tang's invitation. Even if you don't marry his daughter, there is also no need to ruin the relation with him. Because currently, you are even more weak than Elder Yen Tang. Let's not talk about this. Master, just now the Refinement Path Convention was mentioned, and recently everyone, both disciples and elders, are talking about it. What is this Refinement Path Convention? Fang Jiang intentionally changed the topic. His chapter is up dat. D by N. V, E, L, bin.co/m. It is good that you asked me this and not others. Otherwise, they would look at you as if you were stupid. I will explain it to you properly. This Refinement Path Convention is not a normal event, but a grand occasion that occurs only every 100 years in Central Continent. That means, without special lifespan prolonging methods, most Gu masters can only participate once in their lifetimes. Lord Sky Crane explained. Refinement Path Convention, is it an event of Refinement Path Gu masters? Not exactly. The cultivation of Gu masters involves three aspects: nurture, use, and refinement. The Refinement Path Convention is not an event where only Refinement Path Gu masters can participate. As long as you have skill in the Gu refinement aspect, or experience and insight, you can participate. Lord Sky Crane continued, the scale of this grand event is unprecedented, it is the biggest Refinement Path event in the world. Hundreds of thousands of Gu masters participate in every Refinement Path Convention, they come from all sizes of sects in Central Continent. Even Gu masters from Eastern Sea, Western Desert, Southern Border and Northern Plains will appear. Southern Border. A wisp of emotion rose up in Fang Jiang and he could not help but recall Qing Mao Mountain. He asked, after a moment, then what are the 4 entry tasks Shi Hong mentioned? Lord Sky Crane spoke everything he knew without reservation. The so-called 4 entry tasks can be said to be qualifications for entering. Any Gu master, no matter who they are, will refine Gu sometimes in their cultivation journey. The Refinement Path Convention has generous rewards which attract countless Gu masters to participate. If there were not some tests set up, then there would be way too many incompetent people wanting to try their luck. Thus, the 4 entry tasks were created, to distinguish the truly skilled ones and those with refinement path attainment. That is to say, one must finish the 4 entry tasks if they want to participate in the Refinement Path Convention. Fang Jiang came to a realization. He. Lord Sky Crane chuckled, actually, these 4 entry tasks test the basic skills of Gu refinement. Usually, any Gu master with certain experience can pass it. Fang Jiang was startled, Master, I can't pass it. No problem, with my guidance, if you train crazily in this period of time, you can also succeed. Truly. My vision will be expanded. Fang Jiang was joyous. Central Continent, 5 Virtues Mountain. Streams of people were busily moving around 5 Virtues Mountain. 5 Virtues Mountain was not tall. It was located in the eastern part of central continent and was the base of a middle-sized sect, Five Virtues sect. Five Virtues sect was considered a large influence within the surroundings. Its background was profound. In the past, the leader of Five Virtues sect had been an elder of Heavenly Lotus sect. Heavenly Lotus sect was one of the 10 great ancient sects of central continent, a superforce. Thus, although Five Virtues sect had not been established for long, it was able to develop smoothly, and the established forces in the surroundings did not dare to sideline or suppress it. Fang Yuan, disguised as a mortal Gu master, was mixed in the stream of people, slowly moving up Five Virtues mountain. He was covered in a black robe, his physique was average, not tall, not short, not fat, not thin. He covered his face with a mask and his head with a rain hat. The brim of the hat was low and its shade under the sunlight covered even Fang Yuan's shoulders. But this disguise was not conspicuous in the stream of people. A lot of people's disguises were even more excessive than his. Following the slow stream of people, Fang Yuan arrived in front of Five Virtues sect's entrance. This tall entrance had an archway of 16 huge columns, was about 10 meters wide and taller than a 5-story building. On a plaque atop the entrance were 3 giant words shining with golden light, Five Virtues sect. Under the archway of the entrance were 6 magnificent stone lion statues. Behind the entrance was a wide staircase paved using the finest blue jade stones. It was like a blue river leisurely moving up Five Virtues mountain. The stairs were under the shade of green and verdant trees beside them. Winds of the mountain occasionally blew over, bringing cool sensations with them. People of all walks of life jostled with each other, pushing and squeezing as they moved up the stairs. Fang Yuan gazed around. In front of him and towards the left was a group of female Gu masters with long wavy hair, wearing identical striped dresses, indicating they were probably from the same sect. To his right was a white-clothed young master fanning a folding fan, seated on a leopard, and constantly glancing at that group of female Gu masters. To his left, a pair of master and disciple, clothed in shabby clothes, were in the midst of a discussion. "Master, there are so many people," the disciple said with excitement. The master chuckled, "There are many people, don't wander off. My good disciple, you have great talent in refinement path, this is an opportunity for you to make a meteoric rise. You can pass the 4 entry tests with no difficulty, but you must make sure to get a good position. Only in that way will others change the way they look at you, and fight over each other to recruit you." The disciple proudly smiled, "Master, you can rest assured. I will definitely take first place. With the Gu worm reward of first place, I will treat your illness." The master was about to speak, when suddenly an enormous force pushed him from behind. The master was sent rolling on the ground, and the disciple cried out as he hurriedly moved to support his master by the arm. "Step aside! Step aside!" A group of 5 burly men walked over arrogantly. Behind them was an old Gu master, whose gaze shined with a dangerous light. He was sitting comfortably on a chair which was carried by 4 men in front and behind. "The esteemed Lord First Elder of Flying Frost sect is here, are you still not making way?" The burly men who were clearing a path shouted. "Let's move, people of Flying Frost sect are here, we can't afford to provoke them. Flying Frost sect sent their first elder, and are coming with such aggression, they are probably thinking of restoring their face from Five Virtues sect." "Right, last time, Five Virtues sect and Flying Frost sect fought for the mouth of the spring, in the end, Five Virtues sect barely won, while Flying Frost sect suffered severe losses." The crowd discussed amongst themselves, and all made way, not wanting to provoke Flying Frost sect. "Damn it, this is going too far." The disciple supported his master in standing up, and was about to confront them with words. "Don't." The master was an experienced person, and quickly stopped the young disciple. "What kind of force is Flying Frost sect?" Ahead of Fang Yuan, a male Gu master asked his companion. After he received the answer, the Gu master snorted disdainfully, the whole sect has only 3 rank 5 Gu masters, this is a joke. His companion quickly advised, this is Central Continent, it is not Eastern Sea, we are outsiders here, it is better to avoid trouble whenever possible. Alright, enough now. The male Gu master thought for a moment before finally giving a snort, and without waiting for the Flying Frost Sect's people, he squeezed into the crowd to the right. What is with you, are you deaf? Make way, I said make way. The burly men shouted furiously behind Fang Yuan, and tried to drive him away. Fang Yuan did not turn around, as if he had heard nothing. The burly men were furious, but their expressions changed immediately, rank 5 cultivation. Fang Yuan was disguised as a rank 5 Gu master, and right now, he intentionally leaked out a trace of his aura. The burly men were bewildered, but drew back in the end. On the bamboo chair, the first elder of Flying Frost Sect, An Han, straightened up and stared at Fang Yuan's back. Rank 5 aura, it's real. Such a disguise is not that of a lone cultivator, demonic Gu master. An Han narrowed his eyes, and moved his hand, sending the command, are you still not moving around? The burly men immediately changed direction, moving around Fang Yuan towards the front. Among mortals, rank 5 was in existence at the peak, a leader of a force. Even the sect leader of Immortal Crane's sect only had rank 5 cultivation. This group of cowardly bullies. The disciple and master converged into the crowd again, the young disciple furiously staring at the receding figures of Flying Frost Sect's people. Shortly afterwards, he looked at Fang Yuan with curiosity, probing and with a slight hint of reverence. The white-clothed young master on the right folded his fan and got off the leopard. The group of female Gu masters ahead intentionally stopped, many other Gu masters stopped as well, and took the initiative to approach Fang Yuan, trying to leave a good impression. Rank 5 Gu master, if they could build a relationship with such a character. Beside the stairs were the 5 Virtues sect disciples in charge of maintaining order, they were hurriedly transmitting messages, send the report, there is a rank 5 Gu master. Facing these people, Fang Yuan only said one word, scram. His tone was calm but his voice carried coldness and ruthlessness. The crowd changed expressions, a chill emerging from the bottom of their hearts, why would they still dare to trouble Fang Yuan? The young disciple also retracted his gaze in a hurry. Fang Yuan restrained his aura again. In a range of 3 steps around him, there was no one else. Chapter 829, First Round of Gu Refinement. As one walked along the path on the mountain, they would arrive at a point part way up it. There was a huge platform here, on the mountain wall, there were the huge words of Disciple Selection Stage engraved. Every year, the aptitude of the disciples who had just entered the sect would be tested, and the elders would choose their disciples here. But here, the place had been modified roughly. There was a simple Gu formation on the ground, it separated the locations into small areas, and on each of them, there was a number. Once in a while, the people ahead would move forward by a bit. At the sides of the path, 5 Virtues sect disciples were passing out tokens with numbers on them. Fang Yuan took his token, the number on it was 63. Walking into the disciple selection stage, after finding the spot numbered 63, he sat down on the ground. A while later, when people had finished sitting in the square, an elder of 5 Virtues sect declared, this refinement path convention has 4 entry tasks, the test begins now. At the next moment, the hundreds of Gu masters on the disciple selection stage started showing off their skills. Some of their hands were burning with flames, this was a fire refinement method. Some breathed out smoke, it was a smoke refinement method. Some released several ice snakes, the snakes worked together and breathed out cold air, this was an ice refinement method. And in Fang Yuan's hands, dozens of starlight specks were dancing, they were like blue fireflies, flying around him. In accordance with the sequence, Fang Yuan placed the Gu refinement materials in, one by one. 15 minutes later, he finished all of the tasks and stood up. Such quick speed. The Five Virtues sect elder in charge of the event knew about Fang Yuan's rank 5 Gu master identity. He had been paying close attention. Even so, when Fang Yuan stood up, this elder showed shock on his face. Fang Yuan's speed was simply too fast. He made no mistakes at all, his technique was extremely skillful and experienced. What, someone already completed it? Fang Yuan's movements attracted the attentions of many Gu masters who were refining Gu. It is that mysterious rank 5 Gu master. The old master stood outside the stage, seeing Fang Yuan, his pupils shrunk as he looked at his disciple in worry. He prayed inwardly, "Good disciple, please do not get distracted from this and lose your focus." Thankfully, his disciple had been concentrating on refining Gu. He was focused and did not notice the commotion around Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan walked onto the highest platform, as the elder from Five Virtues sect left his seat and inspected Fang Yuan's 4 Gu worms. No negative conditions, the Gu worms look like they are well fed and in good shape. The Five Virtues sect elder was secretly shocked. After inspecting them, he cupped his fists at Fang Yuan, saying warmly, "Lord, please come this way into the mountain." Fang Yuan nodded, slowly walking and leaving the disciple selection stage. No way, is this possible? Someone actually got through using less than 1/3 of the time. Such high refinement path attainment. The people outside were talking among themselves. Among the Gu masters who were refining Gu, some were so shocked that their minds wavered, causing their Gu refinement to fail. Fang Yuan was here to join the refinement path convention. He did not need to hide his skill. He was a Gu immortal, after all, he did not need to conceal his ability. He walked up the mountain and after a while, an elder from Five Virtues sect welcomed him. "Sir, please hold on." The elder was about to speak but Fang Yuan waved his hand, interrupting him. "I know your intention. I have no interest. Just this mere Five Virtues sect cannot accommodate me." The elder was stunned before rage flashed on his face. He came here with the sect leader's orders to try and recruit Fang Yuan, to invite him to be an external elder in the sect. In truth, Five Virtues sect became one of the signing up locations for the Refinement Path convention in order to recruit some talents. With Fang Yuan's rank 5 cultivation level, Five Virtues sect was paying great attention to him. With the Refinement Path attainment that he displayed, even the Five Virtues sect leader was shocked. How could he let such a talented person go? Thus, he ordered this elder to come and negotiate. But before this elder even spoke about his intentions, Fang Yuan rejected him. Being mercilessly rejected like this made the elder embarrassed. "What else do you want?" Fang Yuan looked at him coldly. The elder's face turned purple. He snorted coldly, "Sir, you actually are looking down on our Five Virtues sect, aren't you being too arrogant? You want to duel me?" Fang Yuan's voice was cold. The elder's anger subsided. He looked at Fang Yuan deeply. Good, sir, you think highly of yourself. I am sure you can obtain a good position in the Refinement Path convention. My Five Virtues sect will be waiting to watch it." Saying so, he waved his sleeves and left. Fang Yuan felt indifferent. He continued moving forward. He came to a cliff and arrived at the Wood Virtue Hall. This hall was hidden in the woods. It was green and mixed in with the grass and trees in the surroundings. Fang Yuan walked into the hall. There were many tables and chairs inside. Elite disciples of Five Virtues sect were managing the place. Seeing Fang Yuan's arrival, a disciple went up. "Senior, may I ask for your name, sect, and main Gu master cultivation path?" Fang Yuan replied, "My name is Fang Yuan, my sect will be kept as a secret, my main path will be kept as a secret." "Oh, okay, senior, please pay 100 primeval stones as the sign-up fee. This fee will be used in..." Before the disciple finished his words, Fang Yuan tossed him the primeval stones that he had prepared. The disciple caught it flurriedly, before saying politely, "Please wait a moment." A short while later, Fang Yuan obtained a token. On the token, the words Fang Yuan were written. At the back, there was a line of words, sect hidden, path hidden, signed up at 5 Virtues sect. At the end, there was the time of signing up. Senior, please take good care of this token. If you lose it, you should get a replacement as soon as possible, otherwise you will not be able to join the Refinement Path Convention. Please continue on your way up the mountain. The Fire Virtue Hall has the first round of the refinement competition. Only after Senior passes this round can you join the second round. The disciple explained patiently. Fang Yuan took the token and left the Wood Virtue Hall. By now, the sign-up process was over. Central Continent's Refinement Path Convention was created by the 10 great ancient sects, but secretly, Heavenly Court was supporting it. The Refinement Path Convention was of a huge scale. There were hundreds of sign-up locations all over Central Continent. Most of them were sects similar to 5 Virtues sect, having abundant strength and being closely linked to the 10 great ancient sects, or simply one of their representatives. Fang Yuan wanted to join the Refinement Path Convention. He had to sign up at one of these locations. By refining Gu on the spot, and completing the 4 tasks, he would have the qualifications to sign up and receive the token. Because there were many demonic path Gu masters signing up for the Refinement Path Convention, and even Gu masters from the other 4 regions, the details for signing up were very flexible. Names could be made up, sects and paths did not need to be stated, the only important thing was the token itself. There was also a group of special Gu masters. These people were either in sects or they themselves had obtained a good position in the previous Refinement Path Convention, thus they could join the Refinement Path Convention automatically. For example, Hong Yi was such a case. He was in Universal Life Academy, which had obtained a placing near the end of the list 100 years ago in the Refinement Path Convention. This gave them 3 spots to join the Refinement Path Convention automatically. What was worth noting was that this treatment was only for Central Continent Gu masters, as well as Central Continent sects. After all, this Refinement Path Convention was held by the 10 great ancient sects of Central Continent. They would favor their own region. Of course, Immortal Crane's sect had a larger number of spots, but Fang Yuan was only in a subsidiary force of Immortal Crane's sect. If he really went for it, it would be troublesome. Fang Jiang, however, was different. A portion of the spots that the sects had were distributed to disciples and elite disciples, while the other portion went to elders. Fang Jiang was now an elder of Immortal Crane's sect. He could not compete with the disciples for the spot. His refinement path attainment was very low as well. He could not beat other elders. Immortal Crane's sect naturally gave the free spots to those with deep foundation in Gu refinement, those Gu masters that could defend Immortal Crane's sect's prestige in the Refinement Path Convention. Thus, be it Fang Jiang or Fang Yuan, they had to sign up themselves. Fang Yuan held the token and walked up the mountain, entering the Fire Virtue Hall. This was the first round of the competition in the Refinement Path Convention. If his results were bad, he would not be able to join the second round. Fang Yuan went in and was informed of the Gu refinement details. In 30 minutes, I have to refine the rank 1 water light Gu, at least 100 of them to pass and enter the second round. Refining 150 would reward me with 5 kilograms of phantom shadow petals, 180 would get me 6 basins of rootless water, 200 would get me 10 pieces of thunderstrike wood, 240 is third place, 260 is second place, and 276 is first place. I would get the rank 4 healing Gu worm that is good at relieving heat toxins, green shine Gu. Fang Yuan thought in his mind. This first round's difficulty was higher than the first 4 entry tasks. But it should not trouble most of the Gu masters. Because they only had to refine 100 water light Gu to pass and move on to the second round. The rewards for refining a larger number, though, was quite tempting to these Gu masters. First place would obtain a rank 4 Gu worm, green shine Gu. Rank 4 Gu were often something that only the elder of a large force, or the leader of a small force would have. Regarding Fang Yuan, he could buy green shine Gu in treasure yellow heaven. Fang Yuan's status was too high, these rewards had no attraction to him. But what he found interesting was the challenge of these tasks. The materials for Gu refinement are provided beforehand, I can use them for free. They also gave the recipe for water light Gu, and I can follow it casually. But even if I go all out and use the water refinement technique, I can only refine 250 of them. This result is only third place. But here in 5 Virtues sect, the third place position has already been taken. Top V L updates on n/o/v/lb/in.com. In regards to this, it was first come, first served. Once the conditions for the first 3 positions had been fulfilled, no matter how well someone who came later performed, it was useless. In other words, if Fang Yuan wanted to leave his name on the board, he would have to get first or second. Actually, it is not impossible to get first place. I can add in expensive materials and increase the production of Gu worms. Water light Gu is only a rank 1 Gu, if I use rank 2 or rank 3 materials, the production would be higher. But I will have to bear the expenses myself. I can also modify the Gu recipe. With my wisdom path inheritance, I can easily modify this Gu recipe without wisdom Gu's help. But that way, wouldn't I lose the fun of a challenge? Maybe I can try a water fire refinement technique. Since water light Gu is a water path Gu, people usually use water refinement or ice refinement for it. I can do the opposite and use fire refinement, there might be an unexpected result. Chapter 830, Red Lotus Demon Venerable's Inheritance Clues. Fang Yuan had a sudden inspiration, he thought of a great method. The Gu recipe was given, but Gu masters could refine the Gu using their own techniques. For example, to fuse 2 materials, they can use fire to melt them into one, but they could also use water to fuse them together as another method. 2 different methods would be able to achieve the same results. 30 minutes later, Fang Yuan's name was on the first place spot, and he obtained green shine Gu. Fang Yuan did not practice this water fire refinement method much, but the difficulty of refining water light Gu was too low, even with his rusty technique, he refined 277. He was 1 Gu above the criteria for first place. Fang Yuan's exemplary performance made the sect leader of 5 Virtues sect come personally and greet him, apologizing for the poor attitude of that elder. Next, the sect leader vaguely hinted that he wanted to recruit Fang Yuan in a very tactful tone. Fang Yuan rejected him directly, but this sect leader was not upset, he became even more polite as he sent Fang Yuan out, causing everyone around them to look on with much surprise. To be able to get first place, this proved that his refinement path attainment was not low. Regardless of his cultivation level, he would be welcomed and recruited by many forces. With just his refinement path attainment, Fang Yuan had the foundation to go anywhere in the mortal world and live in the lap of luxury. Furthermore, didn't Fang Yuan have rank 5 cultivation level? Thus, the leader of 5 Virtues sect did not dare to offend Fang Yuan, he was very polite. Evidently, not only did this sect leader have a strong background, he even had good foresight, he could adapt to circumstances and place himself lowly, it was no wonder he could create a force like 5 Virtues sect. But he would never guess that Fang Yuan was an immortal. Compared to the endless number of mortals, immortals were too rare. The leader of 5 Virtues sect had been overly worried, with Fang Yuan's personality, even if that elder said worse things, Fang Yuan would be unmoved. As long as they did not obstruct his path to eternal life, whether they scolded or praised him, Fang Yuan would not care about it at all, these were all just pointless talk. There was still some time until the second round. Fang Yuan left 5 Virtues sect and returned to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. He stayed in Central Continent for 1 day, while 3 days and 2 nights had passed in Hu immortal blessed land. Master, Master, the thing you wanted earlier, I've prepared it already. The moment Fang Yuan returned, little Hu immortal appeared, bringing him good news with an expression of, please praise me, written on her face. Very good. Fang Yuan patted little Hu immortal's head, she was very happy, her eyes closed and relaxed. Fang Yuan told the land spirit to prepare some mortal gu worms, some were bought from treasure yellow heaven, while the others were refined by the hairy men in the stone nests. Taking these mortal gu, Fang Yuan mobilized a small amount of star will, they flew out of his mind, into his immortal aperture. In his immortal aperture, Mo Yao's fake will was imprisoned. Fang Yuan. What will is this? Seeing Fang Yuan's arrival, Mo Yao's fake will felt something amiss. Fang Yuan's star will laughed, he did not speak but pounced at her. Mo Yao's will could not dodge in time, bang, the two wills collided, entangling with each other. Mo Yao shouted in shock, she wanted to break free, she tried retreating. Where are you going? Fang Yuan sneered, at his direction, several gu worms flew out, forming a mortal killer move as they froze Mo Yao's fake will in her place. Fang Yuan, you have to think it through. Ordinary wisdom path methods cannot control me. If you force me to my limits, both of us will suffer. Mo Yao's fake will was immobilized, but she could still speak while under the attack of Fang Yuan's star will. Not only that, Mo Yao's fake will was escaping like liquid water, she got the edge over Fang Yuan's star will as she tried to form into a human shape again. One could see that in this battle of wills, Mo Yao's will had the advantage, her experience far surpassed Fang Yuan's. But Fang Yuan was not anxious upon seeing this, he willed and some more gu worms flew out and formed a mortal killer move. This killer move turned into a 5-edged diamond, it attacked and scattered Mo Yao's fake will. Fang Yuan's star will counterattacked. Mo Yao's fake will did not speak, she engaged in battle and tried to defend herself. But at this time, Fang Yuan's third killer move was used, it formed into a starlight spiral as it hit Mo Yao's fake will. Mo Yao's fake will had lost control of the situation, she had no choice but to fight with Fang Yuan's star will inside the starlight spiral. As they merged, the two wills interacted rapidly. Mo Yao's fake will had countless memory fragments, Fang Yuan's star will learned about them now. At the same time, the memories in Fang Yuan's star will were read by Mo Yao's fake will. Amidst their interaction, Mo Yao screamed, Fang Yuan, you are too foolish. You are too arrogant. In that case, so be it. Saying this, Mo Yao's fake will shrunk rapidly, she was trying to suicide and destroy herself. Fang Yuan chuckled, he had predicted this, he willed and a starlight pillar descended from the sky, onto the starlight spiral. In the spiral, Mo Yao's fake will tried to suicide as the fake will shrunk. But under the starlight's radiance, fake will was continuously produced. In fact, a portion of Fang Yuan's star will was converting into fake will, replenishing her. This forced Mo Yao's fake will to be at a certain size, she could not suicide even if she wanted to. Mo Yao, you are too naive. If you had accepted your fate and suicided earlier, would have no way of stopping you at all. But now, you will die if I want you to, and if I want you to live, you have no way of dying. Be obedient and tell me everything that you know. Fang Yuan laughed heartily. Mo Yao's fake will was in despair, Fang Yuan had obtained a method to suppress her so quickly. This was out of her expectations. By now, Mo Yao's fake will knew that she would have no value to him soon, she knew that she could not escape her fate. Just as Fang Yuan had said, if she had suicided earlier, Fang Yuan would not obtain anything. But all living beings in this world had their survival instincts. Anyone would want to live, as long as there was hope, even Mo Yao's will did not want to suicide. A moment later, the battle ended in the immortal aperture. Fang Yuan's star will returned with many benefits. The remainder of Mo Yao's will had lost her fighting spirit, she could not even form into a human shape. Fang Yuan had many arrangements and replenished her fake will, so that he could search her will again. The vigilant Fang Yuan also left behind many mortal Gu worms to immobilize Mo Yao's will, so that she could not suicide. Fang Yuan's star will, which was fighting with Mo Yao, had less than 30% of its original mass after coming out. 70% was expended earlier. Fang Yuan's star will flew into the sky, leaving the immortal aperture and flying up into Fang Yuan's mind. Fang Yuan shut his eyes, checking the details in the star will. Searching souls and searching wills were different. Searching souls was directly searching the soul, reading everything in their memories. Searching wills was using one's own will to forcefully interact with another will. In this process, one had to use many methods to force the other party to comply. Those who were not skilled at dealing with wills would have no gains in the end. Against different wills, the methods required were different. Thankfully, Dong Fang Chang Fan's wisdom path inheritance was very complete. After Fang Yuan studied it, Mo Yao's will, which he had difficulty dealing with earlier, was meat on the chopping board. Each time he searched a will, it needed to recuperate for a while. After all, wills were more fragile than souls. What was worth mentioning was, there was less capacity for storing memories in wills than in souls. Most of the memories were fragments. But what Fang Yuan wanted the most were Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance clues. In this last search, Fang Yuan reached his goal. Red Lotus Demon Venerable, Time Path Inheritance. A while later, Fang Yuan opened his eyes, mumbling. Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance was set in the river of time. Mo Yao did not know what the treasure in the inheritance was. She only knew that to inherit this unrivaled demon venerable inheritance, the first condition was to have spring-autumn cicada. Not only this, the Gu immortal had to self-detonate and use spring-autumn cicada to carry their will into the river of time. In the river of time, they had to search for a stone lotus island. Only after they reach a stone lotus island would they see the will of Red Lotus left there. Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance, it is truly hard to obtain. Fang Yuan sighed. This was too difficult. The rank 6 Spring-Autumn Cicada, once activated, would self-detonate the Gu Master with a certain chance of success. To find Red Lotus will, one had to risk the chance of suicide. Even if the Gu Master successfully enters the river of time, where would they go to find a stone lotus island? Fang Yuan had entered the river of time before. Even though he had 3 precious experiences, he did not find any stone lotus islands. In other words, not only did the Gu Master need to self-detonate and use Spring-Autumn Cicada to carry their will into the river of time, they had to manipulate Spring-Autumn Cicada and swim in the river, searching for some stone lotus island. Geet the L. Test. Vels on no/v/elben. C/om. Fang Yuan could not do that. He currently was using Spring-Autumn Cicada only as a passenger, he could not control the direction or route. To control Spring-Autumn Cicada and reach this level, I need other methods for assistance. But I don't have any. These methods would be time path methods. In this aspect, Fang Yuan was at a loss, he had nearly no knowledge in it. Currently, if Fang Yuan wanted to obtain Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance, there was a long road to travel. He needed to make ample preparations. Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance was in the river of time, it was extremely dangerous for him to try to obtain it. Fang Yuan could only put Red Lotus Demon Venerable's inheritance aside. For the time being, he was going to stay in Hu Immortal Blessed Land while waiting for the Refinement Path Convention's second round. At the same time, he would use the light of wisdom to deduce the immortal killer move vaguely familiar face. He had obtained vaguely familiar face in the Northern Plains auction, it was 50% complete. As for what the 3 core immortal Gu were, the information was not concealed. The problem was that Fang Yuan did not have these 3 core immortal Gu, they were in another person's possession. Immortal Gu were unique. If Fang Yuan wanted to use the killer move, vaguely familiar face, he would need to modify the move and change the core immortal Gu to something else. The best situation would be an immortal Gu he already owned. This was very difficult, because in regards to transformation path and wisdom path, Fang Yuan's attainment level was not very high.